I'm not here also now. मला ते समजत नाही कसं बंद करायचं ते. मी करतोय 1 मिनिट. आणि मी माझा स्पीकर चालू केला तर माईक पण चालू होतोय. Cancel it here. It's asking me to log out and log in again. Okay.
प्रणाम सर, शुरू करने की अनुमति चाहता हूं। रक्षा के क्षेत्र में बजट अनाउंसमेंट 2022-23 पर आयोजित आज के सेमिनार में माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी, रक्षा मंत्री श्री राजनाथ सिंह जी, रक्षा राज्य मंत्री श्री अजय भट्ट जी, सेना के एयर चीफ मार्शल चौधरी और आर्मी और नेवी के सीनियर ऑफिसर्स, सेक्रेटरी DRDO, वर्चुअल माध्यम से जुड़े हुए इंडस्ट्री कैप्टन्स जिनकी संख्या 1000 से भी ज्यादा है, यंग और डायनेमिक स्टार्टअप इनोवेटर्स और अन्य सभी गणमान्य मेहमानों का हार्दिक स्वागत है। हम माननीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय को के अत्यंत आभारी हैं जिन्होंने रक्षा मंत्रालय द्वारा आयोजित इस वेबिनार के लिए अपना बहुमूल्य समय निकाला। आज का यह वेबिनार आह्वान है कि देश रक्षा के क्षेत्र में पूरी तरह से आत्मनिर्भर हो सके और मेड इन इंडिया, मेड फॉर द वर्ल्ड का मार्ग और प्रशस्त हो सके। सर, आज देश रक्षा के क्षेत्र में आत्मनिर्भरता के लिए नए आयाम जोड़ रहा है। डिफेंस इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर्स का निर्माण, 7 नई रक्षा कंपनियों का गठन जैसे ऐतिहासिक निर्णयों के साथ 2022-23 के एनुअल बजट के अंतर्गत कैपिटल आउटले में अभूतपूर्व बढ़ोतरी ऐसे सशक्त कदम हैं जो सैन्य सुधारों तथा आत्मनिर्भरता के राष्ट्र संकल्प को दर्शाते हैं। सर, मैं यह बताना चाहूंगा कि डिफेंस सेक्टर में आत्मनिर्भरता को लेकर जो एफर्ट्स किए जा रहे हैं उनके परिणाम भी आने लग गए हैं। OAB कॉर्पोरेटाइजेशन, जिसके फलस्वरूप अक्टूबर 2021 में 7 नई DPSUs का गठन हुआ था, मात्र 6 महीनों में उनके परफॉर्मेंस में बहुत सुधार हुआ है। मुझे यह भी कहते हुए हर्ष है कि इनमें से एक ने तो पुणे स्थित म्यूनिशंस इंडिया लिमिटेड ने अभी 2 दिन पहले एक बड़े डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट ऑर्डर को साइन किया है जो पहले असंभव सा दिखता था। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, मैं यह भी कहना चाहूंगा कि डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट में हमारी कोशिश है कि इस वर्ष हम रिकॉर्ड पहले से सबसे ज्यादा एक्सपोर्ट का टर्नओवर हासिल करें। सर, इस वर्ष के बजट में डिफेंस R&D के रिफॉर्म के संबंध में महत्वपूर्ण घोषणाएं हुई हैं। इंडस्ट्री लेड डिजाइन और डेवलपमेंट एफर्ट्स को लेकर डिफेंस इंडस्ट्री में बहुत एक्साइटमेंट है। मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को आश्वस्त करना चाहूंगा कि हम सभी मिलकर DRDO, इंडस्ट्री, स्टार्टअप, सर्विसेज, डिफेंस R&D के नए आयाम को पहुंचने के लिए अपनी पूरी शक्ति से प्रयत्न करेंगे। अब मैं माननीय प्रधानमंत्री महोदय से विनम्र अनुरोध करता हूं कि आज के कार्यक्रम को संबोधित करके हम सबका मार्गदर्शन करें। माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी।
नमस्कार। आज के वेबिनार की थीम आत्मनिर्भर इन डिफेंस, कॉल टू एक्शन। देश के इरादों को स्पष्ट करती है। बीते कुछ वर्षों से भारत अपने डिफेंस सेक्टर में जिस आत्मनिर्भरता पर बल दे रहा है उसका कमिटमेंट आपको इस वर्ष के बजट में भी दिखेगा। साथियों, गुलामी के कालखंड में भी और आजादी के तुरंत बाद भी हमारी डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग की ताकत बहुत ज्यादा थी। दूसरे विश्व युद्ध में भारत में बने हथियारों ने बड़ी भूमिका निभाई थी। हालांकि बाद के वर्षों में हमारी ये ताकत कमजोर होती चली गई, लेकिन ये दिखाता है कि भारत में क्षमता की कभी कमी न तब थी न कमी अब है। साथियों, सुरक्षा का जो मूल सिद्धांत है वो ये है कि आपके पास अपना कस्टमाइज और यूनिक सिस्टम होना चाहिए, तभी वो आपकी मदद करेगा। अगर 10 देशों के पास एक ही तरह के डिफेंस उपकरण होंगे तो आपकी सेनाओं की कोई यूनिकनेस नहीं रहेगी। यूनिकनेस और सरप्राइज एलिमेंट ये तभी हो सकते हैं जब उपकरण आपके खुद के देश में विकसित हो। साथियों, इस साल के बजट में देश के भीतर ही रिसर्च, डिजाइन और डेवलपमेंट से लेकर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग तक का एक वाइब्रेंट इकोसिस्टम विकसित करने का ब्लूप्रिंट है। रक्षा बजट में लगभग 70% सिर्फ डोमेस्टिक इंडस्ट्री के लिए रखा गया है। डिफेंस मिनिस्ट्री अब तक 200 से भी ज्यादा डिफेंस प्लेटफॉर्म्स और इक्विपमेंट की पॉजिटिव इंडिजनाइजेशन लिस्ट जारी कर चुकी है। इस लिस्ट की घोषणा के बाद डोमेस्टिक प्रोक्योरमेंट के लिए लगभग 54,000 करोड़ रुपीस, करीब 54,000 करोड़ रुपए के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन किए जा चुके हैं। इसके अलावा 4.5 लाख करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा मूल्य के उपकरणों से जुड़ी खरीद प्रक्रिया भी अलग अलग स्टेजेज में है। बहुत जल्द तीसरी लिस्ट भी आने वाली है। ये दिखाता है कि हम देश में ही डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग को किस तरह सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। साथियों, जब हम बाहर से अस्त्र शस्त्र लाते हैं तो उसकी प्रक्रिया इतनी लंबी होती है कि जब वो हमारे सुरक्षा बलों तक पहुंचते हैं तब तक उसमें से कई आउटडेटेड हो चुके होते हैं। इसका समाधान भी आत्मनिर्भर भारत अभियान और मेक इन इंडिया में ही है। मैं देश की सेनाओं की भी सराहना करूंगा कि वो भी डिफेंस सेक्टर में भारत की आत्मनिर्भरता का महत्व समझते हुए बड़े महत्वपूर्ण निर्णय ले रहे हैं। आज हमारी फौज के पास भारत में बने साजो सामान होते हैं तो उनका आत्मविश्वास, उनका गर्व भी नई ऊंचाई पर पहुंचता है। और इसमें हमें सीमा पर डटे जवानों की भावनाओं को भी समझना चाहिए। मुझे याद है, जब मैं सत्ता के किसी गलियारे में नहीं था, मेरी पार्टी का काम करता था, पंजाब मेरा कार्यक्षेत्र था, तो एक बार वाघा बॉर्डर पर जवानों से गपशप करने का मौका मिल गया। वहां जो जवान तैनात रहते थे, उन्होंने चर्चा के दौरान मेरे सामने एक बात कही थी और वो बात मेरे मन को छू गई थी। उन्होंने कहा था कि वाघा बॉर्डर पर भारत का जो गेट है वो हमारे दुश्मन के गेट से थोड़ा छोटा है। हमारा गेट भी बड़ा होना चाहिए, हमारा झंडा उससे ऊंचा होना चाहिए। ये हमारे जवान की भावना होती है। हमारा देश का सैनिक इस भावना के साथ सीमा पर डटा रहता है। भारत में बनी चीजों को लेकर उसके मन में एक अलग स्वाभिमान होता है। इसलिए हमारे जो रक्षा उपकरण होते हैं उनके लिए हमें अपने सैनिकों की भावनाओं का आदर करना चाहिए। ये हम तभी कर सकते हैं जब हम आत्मनिर्भर होंगे। साथियों, पहले के जमाने में युद्ध अलग अलग तरीके से होते थे, आज अलग तरीके से होते हैं। पहले युद्ध के साजो सामान में परिवर्तन आने में दशकों लग जाते थे, लेकिन आज युद्ध के हथियारों में देखते ही देखते बदलाव आ जाता है। आज जो शस्त्र है उन्हें आउट ऑफ डेट होने में समय नहीं लगता है। जो आधुनिक टेक्नोलॉजी आधारित हथियार है वो तो और भी जल्दी आउट ऑफ डेट हो जाते हैं। भारत की जो आईटी की ताकत है वो हमारा बहुत बड़ा सामर्थ्य है। इस ताकत को हम अपने रक्षा क्षेत्र में जितना ज्यादा इस्तेमाल करेंगे हमें उतने ही सुरक्षा में हम आश्वस्त होंगे। जैसे अब साइबर सिक्योरिटी की बात ले लें, अब लड़ाई का वो एक हथियार बन गया है और वो कोई सिर्फ डिजिटल एक्टिविटी के लिए सीमित नहीं रह गई है, ये राष्ट्र की सुरक्षा का विषय बन चुका है। साथियों, ये भी आप भली भांति जानते हैं कि डिफेंस सेक्टर में हमेशा किस तरह का कंपटीशन रहा है। पहले के समय में बाहर की कंपनियों से जो सामान खरीदा जाता था उसमें अक्सर भांति भांति के आरोप लगते थे। मैं उसकी गहराई में जाना नहीं चाहता हूं, लेकिन ये बात सही है कि हर खरीदी से विवाद पैदा होता था। अलग अलग मैन्युफैक्चरर्स के बीच जो कंपटीशन होता है उसके कारण दूसरे के प्रोडक्ट को नीचा दिखाने का अभियान निरंतर चलता रहता है और उसके कारण कंफ्यूजन भी पैदा होता है, आशंका भी पैदा होती है और भ्रष्टाचार के दरवाजे भी खुल जाते हैं। कौन सा हथियार अच्छा है, कौन सा हथियार खराब है, कौन सा हथियार हमें उपयोगी है, कौन सा उपयोगी नहीं है, इसे लेकर भी बहुत कंफ्यूजन क्रिएट किया जाता है, बहुत योजना पूर्वक किया जाता है। कॉर्पोरेट बल की लड़ाई का वो हिस्सा होता है। आत्मनिर्भर भारत अभियान से हमें ऐसी अनेक समस्याओं का भी समाधान मिलता है। फ्रेंड्स, जब पूरी निष्ठा के साथ संकल्प लेकर हम आगे बढ़ते हैं तो क्या परिणाम आते हैं, इसका एक बेहतरीन उदाहरण हमारी ऑर्डिनेंस फैक्ट्रियां है। हमारे रक्षा सचिव ने अभी इसका बड़ा वर्णन भी किया। गत वर्ष के पहले हमने 7 नई डिफेंस पब्लिक अंडरटेकिंग्स का निर्माण किया था। आज ये तेजी से बिजनेस का विस्तार कर रही है, नए मार्केट में पहुंच रही है, एक्सपोर्ट के ऑर्डर्स भी ले रही है। ये भी बहुत सुखद है कि बीते 5-6 सालों में डिफेंस एक्सपोर्ट में हमने 6 गुना वृद्धि की है। आज हम 75 से भी ज्यादा देशों को मेड इन इंडिया डिफेंस इक्विपमेंट्स और सर्विसेज दे रहे हैं। मेक इन इंडिया को सरकार के प्रोत्साहन का परिणाम है कि पिछले 7 सालों में डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए 350 से भी अधिक नए इंडस्ट्रियल लाइसेंस इश्यू किए जा चुके हैं, जबकि 2001 से 2014 के 14 वर्षों में सिर्फ 200 लाइसेंस जारी हुए थे। फ्रेंड्स, प्राइवेट सेक्टर भी डीआरडीओ और डिफेंस प्लस डिफेंस पीएसयूज इसकी बराबरी पर आए, इसलिए डिफेंस आर&डी बजट का 25% इंडस्ट्री, स्टार्टअप्स और एकेडमिया के लिए रखा गया है। बजट में स्पेशल पर्पज व्हीकल मॉडल की व्यवस्था भी की गई है। ये प्राइवेट इंडस्ट्री के रोल को सिर्फ एक वेंडर या सप्लायर से आगे एक पार्टनर के रूप में स्थापित करेगा। हमने स्पेस और ड्रोन सेक्टर्स में भी प्राइवेट सेक्टर के लिए नई संभावनाएं बनाई हैं। उत्तर प्रदेश और तमिलनाडु के डिफेंस कॉरिडोर्स और इनका पीएम गति शक्ति नेशनल मास्टर प्लान के साथ इंटीग्रेशन देश के डिफेंस सेक्टर को जरूरी ताकत देंगे। साथियों, ट्रायल, टेस्टिंग और सर्टिफिकेशन की व्यवस्था का ट्रांसपेरेंट, टाइम बाउंड, प्रैग्मेटिक और निष्पक्ष होना एक वाइब्रेंट डिफेंस इंडस्ट्री के विकास के लिए बहुत जरूरी है। इसके लिए एक इंडिपेंडेंट सिस्टम समस्याओं को दूर करने में उपयोगी सिद्ध हो सकता है। इससे देश में जरूरी स्किल सेट के निर्माण में भी मदद मिलेगी। फ्रेंड्स, आप सभी से देश की बहुत सारी उम्मीदें जुड़ी हुई हैं। मुझे विश्वास है कि इस चर्चा से डिफेंस सेक्टर में आत्मनिर्भरता के लिए नए रास्ते बनेंगे। मैं चाहता हूं, आज सभी स्टेक होल्डर से हम सुनना चाहते हैं। हम आप लोगों को लंबे भाषण देना नहीं चाहते हैं। ये आज का दिवस आपके लिए है। आप प्रैक्टिकल चीजें लेकर के आइए, बताइए। अब बजट निर्धारित हो चुका है। 1 अप्रैल से नया बजट लागू होने वाला है। हमारे पास तैयारी के लिए ये पूरा महीना है। हम इतना तेजी से काम करें कि 1 अप्रैल से ही चीजें जमीन पर उतरना शुरू हो जाए। ये जो एक्सरसाइज है ना, इसलिए है। हमने बजट को भी 1 महीना प्रीपोन करने की पद्धति डेवलप की है। इसके पीछे भी इरादा यही है कि हमें एक्चुअली बजट लागू होने से पहले सभी डिपार्टमेंट को, स्टेक होल्डर्स को, पब्लिक प्राइवेट पार्टनरशिप मॉडल को तैयारियां करने का पूरा अवसर मिले, ताकि हमारा समय बर्बाद न हो। मैं आप सबसे आग्रह करता हूं, ये देशभक्ति का काम है, ये देश सेवा का काम है। हम आइए, मुनाफा कब होगा, कितना होगा, वो बाद में सोचिए। पहले देश को ताकतवर हम कैसे बनाएं, इस पर सोचिए। मैं आपको निमंत्रण देता हूं और मुझे खुशी है कि आज हमारी सेना के हमारे तीनों अंग बड़े उमंग और उत्साह के साथ इन कामों में पूरी इनिशिएटिव ले रहे हैं, प्रोत्साहन दे रहे हैं। अब ये मौका हमारे प्राइवेट पार्टी के लोगों ने खोना नहीं चाहिए। मैं फिर एक बार आपको निमंत्रण देता हूं। मेरी आप सबको बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं। धन्यवाद।
Now we'll make that. We have a brief presentation just for 5 minutes, and then after that they'll break into various groups. So if you permit, sir, we'll quickly run you through the presentation. Good morning. We'll just quickly run you through the presentation. Most of the points have already been spoken by the Honorable Prime Minister. This is a broad status of the defense industry. I will not delve into it too much, but the only point being made is we have a sizable defense industry which is close to 85,000 crore currently, and the increasing share of private sector is one of the important highlights. We have done a lot of measures have been taken to bring in reforms in the defense manufacturing ecosystem. Importantly, the defense acquisition procedure is now based on the tenets of Aatmanirbharta Bharat. Buy Indian IDDM is our top preference. 2 lists have been notified, FDI limits have been enhanced, and the positive indigenization list for DPSUs have also been issued recently. And this goes to show what the Honorable Prime Minister sir was referring to. There's an increasing share of domestic procurement. Now 68% of our total procurement will be through the indigenous sources. And this also goes to show how the compliance burden has been reduced. 566 licenses are now cumulatively issued for defense manufacturing to the private sector. This also goes to show how the export authorization procedure has been streamlined, and because of the number of days which used to take earlier was 86 has been now brought down to 35, and because of these increasing export authorizations, it's quite likely that this year we might record the highest ever export performance for defense. The industry-led design and development, which is the main topic for today's webinar. Make 2 is one of our important highlights, and we have 2 procurement contracts done and a lot of projects in the pipeline. Quickly come down to IDEX. This is one of an important initiatives where startups have been now engaged through the defense manufacturing ecosystem. Next slide. In terms of indigenization, the Surgeon portal, all of you are aware, has been instrumental in getting indigenization of various items. Close to 3,000 crores has been saved as part of this effort. In defense corridors, as Honorable Prime Minister pointed out, we have targeted to have investments of close to 10,000 crores in the 2 corridors, and both the corridors are today represented in the webinar, and they will be making presentations when we break out. In terms of organizational reforms, as was mentioned by the Honorable Prime Minister, ordnance factories, 7 new companies, and now we are also looking at reforming the quality assurance agency system from the traditional inspection based to prevention based. So I'll now quickly come down to the housekeeping about the webinar today. As you're all aware, we have 4 themes which are being covered. These are all part of the budget announcements. We have the first theme, which is the progressive increase in the capital procurement budget. You're all aware about 68%. We have raised certain questions here. Importantly, as the Honorable Prime Minister pointed out, is the industry ready to absorb the increased outlay? What are the practical difficulties and challenges? What will be the key measures? And how do we bring down the time that we take in terms of the placement of orders? That's theme 1. Theme 2 is about all-round defense R&D ecosystem in the country. All of you are aware that 25% of defense R&D budget has now been earmarked for the industry. It's a major policy initiative. These are the current vehicles that we have, make provisions. The kind of questions that we are asking here is how will we arrive at this budget? What will be the structure and mechanism for disbursal? What specific areas will be reserved for industry? What could be the technologies and platforms amenable for industry-led effort? And can we prepare a time-bound action plan, as the Honorable Prime Minister pointed out, on the theme 2? So this theme 1 and theme 2 would be running parallelly as part of the first session. Then we have the second breakout session, where the theme 3 is again, as was pointed out, is about the setting up of the independent nodal umbrella body for reforming the trial testing and certification. There is no current entity which caters to these requirements, so the budget announcement has been made. We have also put out in the theme paper what exactly we mean out of this. The kind of questions that we are going to raise here have also been put out before the industry, and we'd like to understand from you what could be its scope, how should it be funded, what kind of a manpower system that we need to have, the governance structure, and how can we involve industry in managing and running this particular body. The fourth theme, which is again going to be running parallel in the second breakout session, is about the SPVs by the industries with DRDO and other organizations. The theme paper has been circulated, and we have also raised a lot of questions here, and we'll be expecting suggestions coming in from the industry. So I'll just quickly tell you how these breakout sessions will run. So we'll now have 2 sessions which will be running in parallel, starting at 11:10. Once we close this, then we'll give a small 5 minutes break. After that, you can go through the same link that you have for the first session. If you want to go into the second theme, then you can join the other link that we have also separately circulated. Participants can definitely hop in and hop off from one session to another. And we expect this to be interventions and interactive. And finally, based on this, we'll have the complete agenda coming out in the valedictory session, which is going to be starting after these sessions are over at 13:40. And in that, we'll sum up what all discussions have happened in these sessions and the address by the Honorable Raksha Mantri. So friends, this is how the entire webinar is now structured. I'll once again thank the Honorable Prime Minister and Honorable Raksha Mantri ji and Honorable Raksha Rajya Mantri ji for gracing the inaugural session. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I can't see. अशोक कौन किस कनौड़ी बोल रहे हैं? कौन किसने बोला? I couldn't make out.
Patil, sir.
ओ अच्छा, पाटिल साहब का मैं देख नहीं पा रहा हूँ आपको, लेकिन हाँ नमस्कार नमस्कार, मैं देख नहीं पा रहा था अभी तक आपको.
Probably, sir, one has to continue 5 seconds minimum to be visible.
Okay, right. Good to see all of you, virtually. I can, 4-5 लोग ही दिखते हैं. अभी मैं गांधीकर को देख पा रहा हूँ.
Before the session begins,
Aatmanirbharta Bharat is propelling India and the defense industry towards a brilliant and self-reliant future. It's a quantum leap to modernize armed forces through indigenization. Revolutionary policies creating a robust defense industrial ecosystem. Make procedures encouraging indigenous design and manufacturing. IDEX, promoting innovators and startups. Positive indigenization lists by services and DPSUs. Ease of doing business. Seven new defense companies exploring new markets. The results are staggering. The journey has taken a leap forward. Major announcements made in the recent budget. The government laid a runway for the Indian industry, progressively increasing capital procurement budget earmarked for domestic industry. Is the industry ready? Are there practical difficulties? A glorious era for indigenous defense design, development and manufacturing has arrived through our unwavering commitment to open up opportunities for the domestic industry.
Good morning, everybody. I welcome you all to this Breakout Session 1, theme of which is progressive increase in the capital procurement budget for domestic industry, opportunities and challenges. I now hand you over to the moderator cum rapporteur of this session, Rear Admiral Pritam Lal, retired Principal Advisor, SID. Over to you, sir. Admiral Lal, over to you.
He is muted.
Gentlemen, I hope you can all hear me now.
Yes, sir.
After that very motivating address by our Honorable Prime Minister and detailed presentation by Mr. Sanjay Jaju on the state of Indian defense industry, it's now my privilege this morning to extend a warm welcome to Dr. Ajay Kumar, Defense Secretary, Mr. S.P. Shukla, President SIDM, Lieutenant General Shantanu Dayal, Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Professor Abhay Karandkar of IIT Kanpur, Mr. Sukaran Singh, heads of industry associations and captains of the Indian public and private industry. As mentioned by Group Captain Anupam, the theme for the deliberations during this session is progressive increase in the capital procurement budget for domestic industry, opportunities and challenges. The session has been divided into 4 segments. The first part is opening address by respected Defense Secretary Ji, who will also set the context. It will be followed by a presentation by President SIDM. The third segment will have brief interventions by our other panelists. And the fourth segment will be interactions by the participants. Now, since we have a very limited time of just 60 minutes to gather everything, I will request all the participants, in case they have any suggestions on the 4 issues that are required to be deliberated during this session, kindly put your comments and suggestions in the chat box. Secondly, if you have any question that you would like to ask any one of the panelists who would be speaking after we finish this initial introduction, kindly put it in the Q&A box so that I do not have to shuffle between chat and Q&A box just to find out who is asking what question. From here, therefore, I will now invite Dr. Ajay Kumar, Defense Secretary, to please deliver his opening address and set the context for the deliberations for this session. Dr. Ajay Kumar, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Rear Admiral Pritam Lal. Shri SP Shukla ji, President of SIDM, Shri Jayan Patil ji, Professor Abhay Krandikar, and many others. It is not possible to name everyone here. It is always a pleasure to be with industry discussing what is the way forward for making our country truly Aatmanirbharta. I just want to make 3 small points in this regard, which I think are the most significant statements of commitment as far as government is concerned. The first one is that government has asked all stakeholders within the government that they should take an in-principle decision not to import. Now, I think there cannot be any more definitive statement of intent where all stakeholders not to import is the default rule. The second point which I would like to mention is with respect to increased allocation for domestic procurement. This year or in the coming year of 22-23, 68% of the budget has been allocated for domestic procurement. And our effort is to go even more. However, since there are previous contracts and previous commitments, therefore we needed some budget to keep it for the existing commitments, and that is why 68%. But you have seen that in last 2 years, from 54% to 58% to 64%, and now to 68%. There is a clear progressive trend. The second effort last year, as has been suggested by the industry, we had said that 25% of the domestic, roughly 15% of the overall capital outlay budget will be for the private sector, and 1,000 crore rupees will be for the startups. In 22-23, we will continue to earmark 25% of the domestic outlay for private industry and a suitable amount, 1,000 crores, or if required, slightly more than 1,000 crores for the startups. The point I want to make here is last year, although we had earmarked this, we were not fully able to utilize this amount. And therefore, in this point, I think we must create a collective strategy how we make sure that this earmarked budget will be fully utilized. The third point which I want to make is that, and the Honorable Prime Minister has made all these points actually, but he also, today, we have asked all our defense PSUs to take up indigenization of major LRUs and subsystems. We all know that we are today talking of something which is made in India. The indigenous component is 40%, sometimes 50% for major platforms, which means 40 to 50% of these major LRUs are getting imported. Some of these LRUs or systems actually comprise of most advanced technologies for that particular platform, whether it is multifunctional displays or whether it is fire control systems or whether it is engines, etc., transmission systems. We have now decided that even for the most difficult LRUs, and drawing from the earlier statement that all stakeholders, including DPSUs, the first option shall be not to import. They shall be taken up for indigenization or and when I say indigenization, it is not only about reverse engineering existing products, but developing similar equivalent of our own product or system for these LRUs. And the RFPs, EOIs, etc. for these LRUs, at least 100 such major LRUs, the development cost of which will run into several thousand crores, will be issued by defense PSUs. We are targeting that before DEF Expo, which is March 10th to 13th, or 10 to 15, 10 to 14, these RFPs will be out available for the industry to participate. My request here is that all these efforts cannot be completed without combined might of all the stakeholders. There may be some existing technologies, IPRs, which DRDO may have. The might of academia has to be used. The innovation and smartness of our startups has to be used. The financial and experience and capabilities of our industry has to be used. And it is therefore for each of these LRUs, depending on the model which is most suitable. In some cases, this year's budget talks about setting up SPV. So there is a huge opportunity for increasing the value addition of the indigenously developed products in the country. And that market today in India itself is about 40-50,000 crores, giving the 80-90,000 crore worth of Indian industry. But if you look at the global market, the market is much bigger. And therefore, the point I'm making is, the third point I make is, there's a huge opportunity which is hopefully going to come in the next 1 month in the form of development of LRUs, which the industry can look forward to, plan for it, and we would work with the industry. Let me conclude. I have always said that industry needs to lead and we need to follow. So we look forward for suggestions, guidance, and other inputs which could help us. The collective goal between both industry and government are trying to pursue is being self-reliant, Aatmanirbharta. And it is for this goal, I think we will work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much for very clearly setting the context and, more importantly, stating the intent of the government as regards development of the Indian industry is concerned. No import as the first plank for acquisition of capabilities. Huge opportunities that lie in store for the private industry for undertaking design and development of this large number of LRUs which are being imported presently by the DPSUs. I'm sure your words are music to the ears of the industry, and they will participate enthusiastically. I will now request Mr. S.P. Shukla, President SIDM, to kindly make his presentation, please. Over to you,
Thank
sir.
you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ajay Kumar, Defense Secretary, Lieutenant General Shantanu Dayal, Deputy Chief of Army Staff, Shri Avani Savasthy, CEO UPIDA, Shri Sanjay Jaju, Additional Secretary, Department of Defense, other senior officials from government and defense forces, and my colleagues from Indian defense industry. At the outset, I would like to congratulate the Defense Secretary and his team at Ministry of Defense for a domestic industry-oriented defense budget, which seeks to consolidate government's initiatives for Aatmanirbharta in defense and Make in India for large programs. Indeed, recent few years will be known as the era of transformation in our defense sector, and compliments are due where they are due. I congratulate Ministry of Defense wholeheartedly. Next, please. I would like to convey the gratitude as well as appreciation of entire defense industry for organizing this seminar to discuss 100% utilization of the enhanced budgetary allocations for capital procurement, particularly the 68% which has been earmarked for domestic industry. We must rise to the challenge as an industry and make sure that trust reposed by the government in procuring 68% from domestic sector is fulfilled. We will, sir, I assure you. Today, I will touch upon the capital budget and surety bonds as R&D portion is being covered in a separate session. Next. Very briefly, sir, our goal is to ensure full utilization of our capital allocation, and an equitable mix of public and private sector participation. Here we have few humble suggestions. Firstly, it will be possible now with all the right policies in place recently that 15% annual growth for domestic allocation in rupee value can be targeted for next few years. This 15% growth will ensure that percentage of domestic procurement will rise from 68% on year basis. Someone can ask why 15%? We have to keep in mind what is the rise in annual allocation of defense budget, and the goal is that we should be having defense procurement from domestic sector rising faster than imports, so that 68% of this year can rise to 80 and 90% in the coming years. So, sir, this is a very modest recommendation, 15% in rupee value. That brings us to the next stage. How do we ensure larger order flow to domestic sector? And second, how do we get domestic sector, domestic industry ready to absorb those larger orders? When it comes to larger orders, we will have to look at large programs. Here, sir, our submission is based on inputs from my colleagues in the industry that we will have to proceed with strategic partnership model and make one projects. They are all addressing large platforms. Both of them will create order flow as well as they will create absorption capacity in domestic industry. These two actually address both demand and supply for increasing participation of domestic industry in overall capital procurement, sir. SP model, as originally envisaged, has partnership of private sector companies with foreign OEMs, and therefore no immediate investment is needed by the government. Only when they're ready to start delivering, at that time, it is part of the procurement budget. So this allows better capital efficiency for the defined budgets which are available on year-to-year basis. And sir, third item we would suggest is a monitoring mechanism for utilization of capital outlay to ensure equitable public and private sector participation. We know, and I'm not saying anything new, what gets measured also gets better. So here our suggestion will be that for the current year, planned quantum of orders on overall basis to public and private sectors can be announced within the domestic procurement budget. Actually, you gave a slight indication just now. And for next 2 years, we can have a targeted allocation. It need not be 100% confirmed, but a targeted allocation for the industry, both public and private sector, will help companies to plan that this much investment and capacity they can plan, keeping in mind that an increase is coming in the coming 2 years. That is a great forward-looking statement. We understand that ultimately everything has to be part of the overall union budget, but a tentative idea will be a great help. Next, please. Sir, I will now highlight 4 important points that we need to pay attention to adopt for growing the defense sector. First and foremost, I think slide has not changed. Yes. First and foremost, we need to build order book for private industry. It is a well-known fact in public domain, and we do not have to belabor the point, that current order books of public sector and private sector present a different picture. Most TPSUs today have 5 to 7 years of order backlog, and in private sector, utilization is less. Even newly incorporated entities from OFP, and I congratulate for the recently backed large export order, but even those units have reasonably good backlog at the moment. We therefore will need to pay little extra attention to creating order backlog for private sector. That is where establishing second manufacturing company, a second manufacturing pillar, for those platforms where only one may be existing today will be wonderful. Those who are there today have done a good job over the years, but now country may need second manufacturing company in the same sector if there is only one making a particular platform. This is where, as I mentioned earlier, both SP model with private sector and Make One projects will do wonders. It will be our request that if this year we can target 4 to 5 Make One projects to be awarded, it will go a long way in setting a very strong foundation for a great growth in next 2 to 3 years in share of domestic industry in overall procurement budget. Sir, next point does not require any explanation. For a level playing field, custom duty exemption may kindly be extended to private industry, or alternatively, there should be no exemptions for anyone. And last but not the least, this has been a request of the industry that retraction of RFP or change of SQR should be permitted with the approval of AON sanctioning authority. It should not be approved by anyone else. This brings certain discipline that when issuing AON, at that time we made sure that there will not be a need for withdrawal. This gives her confidence to the private industry that I can start work on the project, spend few crores without the fear of withdrawal. That gives stability in any mission. Next, please. Sir, in conclusion, I would like to say that a lot of excellent work has been done in policy reforms in the recent years. In the next few years, we do look forward to implementation of new policy now in place, which will spur growth in defense sector. I have no hesitation in repeating myself. Recent years will be known as an era of transformation for our sector. We have suggested a few steps today, and I would like to equivocally highlight that defense industry today is ready to absorb the increased capital outlays which have been created this year. I would like to assure wholehearted full cooperation of defense industry and SIDM to MOD for its policy initiatives and endeavors towards Aatmanirbharta Bharat in defense. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for presenting a very comprehensive views of the industry. I'm sure these have all been noted by the Ministry of Defense too. I now request Mr. Avnish Kumar Avasti, CEO of UPIDA, to kindly make his presentation. And my apologies, sir. I think I did not recognize your presence when I opened the proceedings of the session. We are requested to please take over and bring in your presentation.
Good morning. Good morning, sir. Dr. Ajay Kumar, Defense Secretary, sir. Good morning, Mr. Shukla, President SIDM, my dear friend. Good morning, Rear Admiral Pritam Lal Sahab, for moderating this session. Our friends from the industry, our close associate from IIT Kanpur, Director IIT Kanpur, Professor Abhay, all other guests here today. I am very happy to give a short brief on the UP Defense Industrial Corridor. And I would like to state right away that UP in the last 2 to 3 years, from zero, it has become a hero in the area of defense industries. And this is where we would like to acknowledge that when the Defense Industrial Corridor, one of the 2 corridors, was announced in Uttar Pradesh, we had hardly a background on defense industries in UP. And the UP Expressways Authority was given this task in 2018. And now we have the UP Defense Industrial Corridor under the command of the Defense Ministry of Government of India, the state government, and very well I could say that the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Defense Minister, the Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, all and everyone have put their best foot forward to take this entire project forward. You all know that there are 2 defense industrial corridors in Uttar Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. We have in the UP Defense Industrial Corridor 6 nodes: Agra, Aligarh, Lucknow, Kanpur, Chitrakoot and Jhansi. And these nodes lie in the primary and secondary catchment areas of major national highways and expressways. UPIDA is an agency which makes the expressways, and we have been given this task to develop the defense industrial corridor as well as industrial corridors along the new expressways that we are building. Very recently, we have built the Purvanchal Expressway. It's a project worth more than 22,000 crores, more than about $3 billion. And you all know, on a defense aircraft, on a transport plane, C-130, the Honorable Prime Minister landed at Sultanpur on the airstrip which was developed on the Purvanchal Expressway. Next. We have the Defense Industrial Corridor at a glance. 63 MOUs have been signed. You all would recall that a historic Defense Expo was organized in Lucknow. The biggest Defense Expo as on date was organized at Lucknow. You all already know that it is the area where the Honorable Defense Minister, he himself is the local MP, and under his command, we had the Defense Expo organized at Lucknow. We started with the MOUs then, and we have, as on date, signed 63 MOUs, and in all, about land has been allotted to about 25 industries. I would like to state and put on record that 25 land allotments have been made, lease agreements have been signed, and we have already started the work on the infrastructure, and some of the companies have already started work on the ground. And as on date, 2527 crores worth of investment is already committed. I would like to state here that all and everyone would like to note this, that we have crossed about 2500 crores in terms of actual investment on the ground. The land procured with the Defense Industrial Corridor is about 1546 hectares. Right at the beginning, we realized that unless and until we have a land bank, we would not be able to attract industry. As on date, we do allotment of land by the day, by the week. And if there is any company which comes to us within the month in which they apply and deposit their money, we are able to allot them land and execute the lease deed. We, as on date, have the entire Aligarh node populated. You all would know that Aligarh is hardly 100 kilometers from the capital Delhi, and the Honorable Prime Minister himself had appreciated the work at Aligarh when he visited Aligarh, and the entire program was held very close to the defense corridor site. We have the Jhansi, Lucknow and Kanpur node coming up. Kanpur is a place which is very close to IIT Kanpur. We have certain projects taken up in partnership with IIT Kanpur, and the Kanpur node also bears a lot of promise for us in the near future. Next. You all know, you all know that UP is a very large state. UP has one of the best connectivities now in the entire country. We have a large network of national highways. We have the two industrial corridors, the Eastern dedicated freight corridor, as well as the Delhi-Mumbai freight corridors passing through Uttar Pradesh. Most of the Eastern dedicated freight corridor is in Uttar Pradesh itself. So we have a lot of infrastructure, and with the PM Gati program coming up, which coordinates and links all the infrastructure projects, as well as the infrastructure which is coming up in the various road, railways and the airport sector, we in UP are very well prepared to take this all up. You all know that we have the largest expressway network in the country, and as you all know, Purvanchal Expressway has been inaugurated. Traffic is growing by the day. Despite COVID, we were able to complete the project on time, and we are now very soon, in the next 2 months, going to complete the Bundelkhand Expressway, where the Bundelkhand Expressway will give focus to the defense corridor in Bundelkhand, where exactly in Jhansi, the Honorable Prime Minister had laid the foundation stone for the defense corridor. We have also a very large rail network. We have 6 domestic airports, and one of the largest airports in the country, the Jewar Airport, the foundation stone has been laid, and very soon, within the next 3 to 4 years, this airport will come up very close to the NCR region of Delhi. Next. I would like to once again say that the Aligarh node is very close to Delhi. The cost of land at Aligarh is 1/10 of the industrial allotment price at the Yamuna Industrial Agency at Noida and Greater Noida. So Aligarh node provides one of the cheapest lands within the proximity of NCR. And that is one reason why the entire node has been completely occupied by the allocants. We don't have land now, and we are intending to take more land from the farmers to further expand the Aligarh node. The Lucknow node, I would like to come further into the projects which will come up in the Lucknow node. That again is a very promising site right at the heart of Uttar Pradesh. being a part of the capital of the state. Kanpur node, I have already told you, is close to the Agra-Lucknow Expressway and close to IIT Kanpur. The Jhansi node again is close to the army areas of Babina and other places, and it is the Jhansi node where we can develop the new projects for armaments, the new project for rockets, the new projects for manufacturing of ammunition and other such manufacturing items within the defense sector. The Chitrakoot node again is within the Bundelkhand area. It again bears a lot of promise. Next.
Mr. Awasthi, time is a constraint.
Yes. The air and rail connectivity to the nodes again has been stressed in this presentation. Next. Next. The summary of the land which we have acquired is about 1,546 hectares. We have 63 MOUs which promise about 8,838 crores of investment. As I've already told you, we have two new projects coming up with the BrahMos missile coming up at Lucknow and the Bharat Dynamics Limited project, which was the foundation was laid by the Honorable Prime Minister in Jhansi. The total investment already promised is 2,527 crores. Next. We have various projects coming up in Aligarh, Agra, Lucknow, Kanpur, Jhansi. I would not go in detail, but for Aligarh, I would just like to say that the unmanned aerial systems, drone projects, other precision components, electronic items are coming up in, units are coming up in Aligarh. Next. This is what Bharat Dynamics Limited is all about. We have laid the foundation stone with under the guidance of the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, and our Chief Minister. And 183 hectares of land has been allocated to BrahMos at a very cheap price. And this is a project which will come up very fast in Bundelkhand. Next. The BrahMos project land has been allocated at a single rupee at nominal price of 1 rupee 80 hectares of land right in the heart of Lucknow. This is a project which has a lot of promise, and we hope to provide a lot of direct as well as indirect employment, and the boost to the MSME sector can come up due to the BrahMos project at Lucknow. Next.
Mr. Awasthi, please.
Yeah. Aligarh, next. Kanpur, next. Jhansi, next. Lucknow, details of Lucknow, next. Chitrakoot, next. Opportunities and challenges. We have large number of opportunities in the defense corridor of UP. We have the largest manpower available in the country. We have one of the best institutions like IIT Kanpur, ITBHU, large number of technical institutions in UP. Our challenge is that if we could get support from the government of India in the way that we are already getting, and there are certain allocations for the defense corridor for training, for testing, and maybe for providing a boost in the policy, that will ensure that our projects within the defense corridors come up and UP goes forward in the defense area. Next. Next.
Please.
Thank you. Jai Hind. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
sir. That's very encouraging. And may I request you to please share your presentation with the host so that we can share it with any industry who would like to get details of the UP Defense Corridor.
Thank you, sir. I will do that right away, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Right. Having received salient inputs from both the co-chairs, I now turn to the other members on the panel. Once again, time being the constraint, I request the panelists, whom I will invite one by one, to keep their remarks brief, and more importantly, to also limit their remarks to the key points, key issues that have been highlighted by the MOD. And for the sake of bringing everybody on board, let me again, mention the key issues. One, is the industry ready to absorb the enhanced outlay? Two, what are the practical difficulties and challenges being faced by the industry? Three, what kind of measures or changes, in your opinion, are required in the existing policies and procedures? And finally, how to reduce the time lag between the placement of orders? And to begin with, I would like to state that I request the panelists to keep their remarks for a duration of only 2 minutes, because 12:10 we have to start, break, and start another session. So I will now request General Shantanu Dayal to kindly share his remarks.
Thank you, sir. With these 2 minutes available, let me start with thanking Dr. Ajay Kumar, the Defense Secretary, for organizing this and for setting the tone in a very, very visionary manner. I also pay my compliments to the esteemed leaders of the various industries. So let me start by saying that Army in this entire these issues which have been raised and which are in the focus, we look ourselves upon as facilitators, as people who can ensure and who can facilitate various actions by the industry so that our industries become more vibrant and Aatmanirbharta, as also encourage exports. Some of the things which has already been done and which we feel should be done. Number one, as far as Aatmanirbharta is concerned, in this current financial year, in the capital procurement, we have given AON only to Indian industry. No foreign A1s has been given. As far the contracts are concerned, 86% of the contracts have been given only to the Indian industry by value. That means we are already the leaders as far as Aatmanirbharta is concerned. Now coming to the main point as to how do we translate these actions into actual contracts, actual orders. Actually, everything will flow out of that. Some of the points which we personally feel will facilitate are as follows. Number one, as far as the design and development is concerned, we are of the opinion that the monopoly of the design and development must be jettisoned out. And with the additional allocation for design and development should go to more than one agency, body, so that the quality and cost are competitive. Competitiveness in quality and cost will also ensure that good equipment comes to the Indian Army, and also our equipment becomes very, very competitive and very, very sought after in the world market. Second issue is as far as the process of induction or the process of trials, testing, and coming to the contract or the final order stage. In that, we are in total agreement with various proposals of the MOD with respect to certification and other measures done. Now, as far as certification is concerned, we understand that there is a limited number of labs, limited number of accredited agencies, owing to which the same equipment keeps going from one place to another place for the various certificates, which leads to a lot of time. In case we can get large number of these accredited labs at various nodes, definitely not only by one agency, but many more agencies, to bring about a greater transparency in this whole affair, then our time which is used for various trials can be removed or reduced. In that context, I want to also state that till now or till very recent past, there has been dependence on one or two government agencies. We are not, as far as the Army is concerned, we are totally open to having the QA, QC, and all other such inspections being done by any other agencies created by the government. All that we feel is that there has to be more than one. Moment there is only one monopoly, there are issues, there is a long delay, and once there's a difference of opinion, the issue gets delayed and delayed. Second issue is as far as PSQR and SQR is concerned. Now, this is also an issue which keeps troubling the industry. Let me state it openly here, sir. All the PSQR or SQR which has been changed on the request of the Indian industry or our PSUs or DPSU or the DRDO, owing to the reasons that they could not achieve that PSQR. I am not aware of any case wherein the services have tried to increase or change the SQR based on their own requirements. That happens only in case the SQR is 10 years old, 15 years old, then definitely because of change of technology, change of operational dynamics, we need to undertake that change. That obviously everybody understands. But in cases where RFP is withdrawn because of SQR changes, it is only because of various technical not able to reach the particular standard or particular this thing. And as I said earlier, we are totally open to come down to the standard which is currently achievable by the Indian industry. We also understand that it will take some time, especially where niche technologies or very, very critical and complex technologies are concerned. Another aspect is the representations. Whenever the trial takes place, whenever there is a multi firms which are bidding for a particular this thing, we keep getting numerous representations. While we address those representations in a manner in which it is prescribed, however, there could be, if the SIDM or some other industry body could undertake harmonizing these industrial representations. On the same issue, there are two different representations for two different industries which are contrary to each other. We do not know how to satisfy both of them. So therefore, it only leads to further delay. If the industry body or the industry agencies could undertake a resolution of those issues which are beyond the purview, which are basically industry in nature, it will facilitate our work and make the orders faster. In the end, sir, since the time is very less, I will highlight on only three critical aspects, sir. Industry must focus on critical technologies. No, aggregation is fine. DPP, DAP also mandates 50%, 60% of procurement. But as the Defense Secretary also brought out, the key technologies, the critical technologies, unless we get that, we will never become Aatmanirbharta, sir. Number two, there should be no monopoly, sir. Moment we have a monopoly or one agency doing any particular thing, be it government, be it PSU, be it private, any monopoly leads to very protracted delays. We have seen it on numerous occasions, especially in large order cases, sir. And for exports, it is my humble feeling, because we are importers as far as export is concerned. I have got some experience for many years of importing things from the foreign countries. The sole reason based on which we select an item from a foreign country is quality and cost. I presume if we have to export, the foreign customer, the foreign army will look at these two critical aspects, the quality and cost of the Indian defense products. That is all I have to say, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your remarks.
I just wanted to make one comment. I would like to really compliment General Shantanu Dayal for his observations. And I also want to endorse what he says, that the monopoly of in anything, whether it is, and he mentioned about design, development. And I think he also mentioned a very important point, can we, and this is a question which I would like all of us, and a lot of this has to be done by the government also. Can we actually assign design to more than one agency at a time, at least wherever possible? Because that will both reduce the risk and bring in certain amount of competition. I think that is a very important point which he made. Just for future, we must somewhere flag this and try to take it forward.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Professor Karandikar to kindly make his remarks. And once again, please, 2 minutes. We have to close by 12:10, and I have at least 5 more panelists to make their points. Please.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I will restrict it to exactly 2 minutes and make some important build up on the already made interventions by Lieutenant General Dayal. I think as was already mentioned today, that a lot of efforts have been taken by the Government of India in the recent years towards making the country self-reliant and Aatmanirbhar. But one needs to understand that armed forces really need rugged, high quality products, and to develop quality products requires long-term investments and sustenance. So we need to therefore keep a long-term vision in this context, because it will take some years for the Indian industry to develop the products which are of high quality and which can also be exported, and therefore some level of confidence in the Indian industry by the armed forces and vice versa. Both is needed. And in this context, I think Honorable Prime Minister made a very, very important point today where he said that we don't have to treat the industry as vendors or suppliers, but as partners. And I think in a true mannership, if you treat the Indian industry as the partners, and particularly I'm talking of the startups and MSME, while it was said that we have kept 1,000 crores for the startups, and then there are programs like IDEX to develop products by the MSME and the startups which can be absorbed by the Indian industry just tomorrow is actually not possible, and this needs to be understood by both the users as well as I think by the government. So I think we need a long-term vision in this context, and we need to therefore take steps in the directions that we can create a sustainable movement in these directions. And second important point I would like to make is that there is a need of some kind of a standardization being made available. And while the Prime Minister talk of industry-led design, I think, and I know that there are standardization bodies within the defense forces, but I think there is a need to have a standardization which is sort of more open and industry-led. And we have seen that in the civilian industry, for example, in the telecom market, when the Government of India efforts made Telecom Standards Development Society of India, TSDSI, that has made a huge difference at the international scale, where we have been able to make interventions in the 5G and beyond technologies. Increasingly, actually, we have seen traditionally, if you see the defense technologies really where the genesis for developing many applications and users in the civilian technologies, but now we have seen the reverse is happening. The technologies which are developing in the civilian sectors, are getting deployed in the defense sectors. There was a time, of course, all the development and the technology took place from the innovations in the defense. But now, we have exactly the reverse trend. And this reverse trend, obviously, in the civilian sectors is primarily led by the industry. And therefore, there is a need for not only industry-led design, but industry-led standardizations and also the testing and certifications. So I think these are the two points that I would like to make for the brevity of time. I mean, of course, I have a lot more to say, but maybe we'll come back on this, sometime later. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Kananikar. May I now request Mr. Sukaran Singh to please come in.
Thank you so much. I will stay within my time limit, I assure you. I just want to make two quick points.
I think we are not able to hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Now we can.
Sorry, we are looking at the India share of how many rupees crore now are being given to Indian companies. This is a decades-old issue to be thought through because so much is imported, value-add definitions, and so on and so forth. My humble submission is that, and I think I see this from the army and everyone, is that we must look at strategic control over core technologies in the future, which is not measured by the top line that goes to Indian companies. The sub part of it is who determines what is strategic control and where the technology is going. I would simply suggest that it cannot be entities that are already in this, let's say DRDO, because there is at an individual level, if someone has spent a decade developing something, someone else comes up, there may not be neutrality. But strategic control over core technologies that are critical for future development of a platform, how do we measure that rather than the top line? Number one. Number two, I would simply say that we hear a lot about startups, and I would strongly support that, the monies that go there. But let us also go back decades and recognize that you hear the similar stuff for small scale industry, where people used to say, let's reserve this for them, let's reserve this for them. And we know what happened there. So in some sense, it's like the parent that kills the child by making it very easy for him. I would say that the measure of success of this policy would be if we are able to convert what the government is aiding to private sector to fund these startups. So what are we doing so that tomorrow it does not become that we've given 1,000 crore, now it should be 20,000 crore from the government. And actually it is not their fault. At the end of the day, it comes back to the government orders. If the government orders are coming, believe me, the private company will come up and replace the government request that the startups are making for funds. The third thing, and I will end with this, is that I think we must measure the number of policy changes that happen over the total number of policy initiatives that happen. Many people have mentioned it, so I won't say it, but certainly as sort of head of the Tata Aerospace and Defense, I can say that I certainly look at the number of times the government changes policy decisions to decide whether to invest further or not. Even though as Tatas, we would really obviously like to do everything in national interest. The strategic partner policy, especially in the area of NUH, where I think there was a reason why Mr. Parikar made this in 2015. And for 5 years, many companies have actually followed this for it to be done in the private sector. Not because it's a product issue, but because it's an ecosystem issue. Frankly, you can go back and choose a public sector company and create a competition that frankly results in their choice in any case, in which case the good companies will just step back. But the fact of the matter is that you'll miss another chance of doing an ecosystem generation because you'll have chosen a product and won a little skirmish, but the overall war will be just lost because the ecosystem is what we look at. So let me just pause there and thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sukaran Singh. I'll now request Mr. Ravishwaran to please come in.
Thank you, Admiral. Good afternoon to everyone. And I do thank the MOD for this very open approach. And at the same time, I very humbly acknowledge our government's vision for Aatmanirbharta. And I will take on from the gentleman from Tata's, Mr. Sukaran. In pursuance of this national mission, MOD has launched several policy reforms. And I think the most important one, perhaps, is the strategic partnership with the private sector, which can transform the landscape. It is together that we need to create new national assets, to establish a second manufacturing company where only one exists in India. This asset creation will truly meet the aspiration of growing India. Transformation through the SP model with private sector is today imperative. Jobs in defense sector are stagnant. We need to create new jobs. We keep getting asked how much FDI is coming in from MOD. Today it is very low. It comes for parts and components. This will change with the SP model. Large platforms are not exported. Again, having a single manufacturing line for something like helicopters, we will start exporting large platforms. Most importantly, through SP model, competition will be fostered. Monopolies will not be created or encouraged, which in my humble opinion is very important in vibrant democracies like ours, especially since a second manufacturing line, in addition to the existing public sector manufacturing, will be created. And interestingly, and most importantly, at no cost to our government or the taxpayer. I will also anecdotally say something which many officials have told me 3-4 years back. They have asked me multiple times that a strategic partnership is very good for this country, but where is the money? Where is our budget? We don't have any budget. And today we are all sitting together and brainstorming and finding ways for full utilization of the budget. Sir, we must not miss this opportunity. We have the budget today and we must move forward in the manner in which it was envisaged. At the same time, I would like to respectfully point out that foreign companies, which are largely from private sector, have been getting developmental grants or costs from their governments for decades. Similarly, in our national budget, we also make allocations for our DPSUs towards infrastructure. This perhaps is the most difficult competition landscape for anybody and truly for the Indian defense industry, especially from the private sector who want to stand on their own. And sir, the method to break shackles from this quandary or quagmire is through the SP model. I think the time is right. SP model with private sector needs to be implemented as originally envisaged, sir. And we need to have a second manufacturing capability to be put up. The helicopter NUH program perhaps needs immediate advancement because we've all been waiting with bated breath.
Yeah.
We need to move away from the last 2 decades, which were perhaps stagnant, and we need to usher in a new India, and which I think in our Honorable Prime Minister's words would be Naya Bharat. This I think will actually change the landscape, sir, and this would be my submission. Thank you so much.
Okay. Ravi. Thank you, Mr. Ravishwaran. Can I now invite Mr. Ravikant, the CMD Munitions India Limited, to please make his remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. A lot of points have already been covered, but still I feel I would like to cover a few points which I feel would be the practical difficulties the industry may face. And when I'm talking as a part of industry. DPSU and private industry, I consider today as same because both are doing the same job. Based on my experience of 3.5 decades of defense production, I can say that the first difficulty which we are going to face in development of new equipment, indigenous equipment, would be the testing. As of today, we do not have one testing agency which can carry out all these jobs. When we are going to offer an equipment to the services, before that industry would like to test itself. And in defense, since in the defense products, since the technology are multifarious and these are very complex, repeated trials would be required even by the industry themselves. And today, we do not have an agency to do that job. In case if somebody is developing an ammunition, would require a weapon platform. And if somebody is developing a weapon platform, they will require an ammunition. But from where the industry will get it? So that is a first question which we have to answer. Otherwise, we can get the money, we will have a lot of opportunities, but at the end of the day, when we have to deliver the product, there will be a delay because of this. The point number 2 is what Deputy Chief has brought out about the qualitative requirement. Yes, the armies or the defense forces qualitative requirement are very sacrosanct, and definitely to have an edge over the adversary, they would definitely like to have a better equipment. But here my suggestion would be, in case if industry is not able to develop, give 100% QR in the first prototype, can there be a possibility of having Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3 kind of a concept? Some quantity can come as Mark 1, some can come as Mark 2, some can come as Mark 3. Earlier also in service headquarters, this point has been debated many times. I feel that there is a need in case if we can have a policy framework on that. The third thing is the sustained workload. Like if you take an example of L&T, now the K9 Vajra 200 numbers, they have finished in 2 years. Now after that, there is no order. So the workload which is required by the industry to make the project viable has to be on a sustained basis. So the requirement of defense forces would be that everything to be given immediately, whereas the industry would look for that it should be there for a period of time. So we have to strike a balance between these two. And the fourth point which I would like to mention is, let's say by making all efforts, we are not able to achieve the 100% what we were looking for. Let's say we try to develop an ammunition which should go up to 80 kilometers. But by all trials, we are finding it is only going up to 60 kilometers. Maybe the Indian Defense Forces, as per their requirement, may not accept 60 kilometers. But world over, there could be somebody who is ready to accept that 60 kilometer also, because his requirement may be like that. So there should be a certifying agency who can certify that this product has reached 60 kilometers. Today, in case of defense forces of our country, they certify something, it has got a huge value in international market, because everybody knows that the trials and evaluation of Indian armed forces are most stringent. So in case if this can be done, I think it will be good for the industry. Whatever investment they have made, whatever capacity they have created, they would be able to make use of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ravikant. I'll now invite Mr. Mudit Narayan, CTO, Office of the PSA. Please be brief, Mr. Narayan.
I will be. Namaskar, thank you. I think most of the points that had to be spoken were spoken by the previous speakers and the Prime Minister himself. Really the point on the strengths of the equipment are stronger if they're indigenous because nobody else has them. One point on the industry challenges, when IDEX was being designed, One aspect was that can the user provide guidance? And IDEX was trying to become that pipeline to get information about price services to the startups. That has now become a stronger part of our capability, of IDEX's capabilities. But I think that can now be taken up by the tri services themselves. We are aware of several cases where the acquisition process was 10 to 12 years. In that process, the acquiring Directorate General never reached out to the private industry, never reached out to startups, never reached out to DRDO. And that engagement, I believe, is critical. The industry, the academia as well talks about that. So Prime Minister today talked about the long lead time to procurement. That lead time can be used to build the same capabilities using the PSQR, GSQRs with Indian industry, and the academia is ready for that. Our academics, our engineers are second to none in the world, and they can help us think through what the outcomes are rather than just how to re-engineer or reverse engineer products. And I believe that is really where our engineers will stand up. We are hearing so much from enthusiastic entrepreneurs on the chat, and I've been answering some of them. There is now an ecosystem, there is now the political will. What we need is the management within IDEX and incubators to bring technologies to products. Too often we confuse words, technology, product, and platform. We need to understand that a piece of paper does not fight a war. You need a weapon system, that is a product. And that weapon system has to work with the perspectives of the scenarios of the army. So we need people to work on that management, from converting technologies, innovations to products to solutions. And I also reach out to the industry captains on this session. Please work with the entrepreneurs. They will really surprise you, the engineers, the innovators, on what they can deliver outside your systems. Large companies are powerful, but I believe startups will be the cutting edge of that strength. So with that pitch, I invite everybody to come and look at the IDEX website. The simplest website you will find, idex.gov.in. There's a lot of support available for fresh entrepreneurs, fresh companies, established companies. Please come and talk to the IDEX team. They are very well connected to the ecosystem, and that goes both to the entrepreneurs and the wannabe defense majors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan. And last but not the least, Mr. Ashish Kansal. Mr. Kansal, please be brief. Possible, just give one bullet.
Certainly, I'll be brief, sir. If may not one bullet, but just few bullets very quickly.
Most of the should be not more than two.
Okay, sir. I'm grateful to everyone for the opportunity to speak, sir. Sir, two specific points, as sir said, not more than two. Sir, one, there's a gap between the startups and the large industries which needs to be addressed. Once a startup starts growing, a company crosses an MSME level, there is a fund requirement. So our suggestion, sir, if a fund requirement, not a free fund, but maybe an interest-free loan can be made available to such companies, which allows them to grow, so that they are not just dependent on large industries to grow, but they can grow on their own also. If an easy fund availability can be given, if the MOD has a confidence in their product, and funds can be made available to them to grow their companies. Second, sir, when it comes to utilization of budget, sir, the MOD may look at, as Ravi Kant sir also suggested, at repeat orders being given to already tried and tested products, and a policy may be framed to allow such products to be upgraded by the existing vendor itself. And maybe and sometimes you'll be surprised that these upgrades are coming at no cost, because the technology has got upgraded while they were supplying product. And this helps them to allow a sustainable production line. Because what we as industry see is, many times production line is set up, we produce, and the order finishes, and there is a need in the army or the Air Force or Navy, but there is no orders, and the order book has dried up. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kansal. That was very, very crisp and nice. Now it's the time that is going to come in the way of our engaging with the participants. What I have seen is that most of the participants have put in lots of good suggestions in the chat box. Now, I'm afraid we are not going to be able to do one by one culling on that, but I will request the IT team to please take them all out and share it with the Ministry of Defense as well as SIDM, so that we can all put them together and present it to the MOD as inputs from the participants in this particular seminar. Similarly, I can also see that there are about 9-10 questions that have been put, but I'm afraid the time is not there for us to take them up with the with the panelists to answer them. But I've seen many questions are related with the R&D. And I do hope that when you attend the second B session on the other side, breakout session, many answers will come from there. Now, with that, I would like to thank the Defense Secretary and all the other panelists for this session who have shared their most valuable views in trying to seek answers to the 4 issues that MOD has put up. Thank you very much, sir. And with your permission, I may close this session so that we can move on to the next part of the event today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pritam Lal. Thank you.
The next session will
Thank you so
start
much.
at 12:25. We will have the session by DRDO titled SPVs by Industries with DRDO and other organizations in this link. And on the link 2 that has been shared with you, we'll have the next session of developing all-round defense R&D ecosystem in the country. So see you at 12:25.
भारत के नजरिए से देखते हैं तो लगता है कि 21वीं सदी भारत की हो, ये हमारा सपना ही नहीं, ये हम सभी की जिम्मेदारी हो, ये हमारा सपना ही नहीं, ये हम सभी की जिम्मेदारी भी है.
The clarion call of Aatmanirbhar Bharat by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has led to creation of thriving ecosystem for development and manufacturing the defense equipment within the country.
Our government is committed to reducing imports and promoting Aatmanirbharta in equipment for the armed forces. 68% of the capital procurement budget will be earmarked for domestic industry in 22-23.
This budget announcement will give a huge boost to the development of indigenous defense system.
Private industry will be encouraged to take up design and development of military platforms and equipment in collaboration with DRDO and other organizations through SPV model.
The new technologies in the areas of drones, materials, quantum, cyber, guns, missiles, combat aircrafts, and so on requires extensive research and development by all stakeholders. This special purpose vehicle model will bring in a fusion and much called for synergy amongst the R&D laboratories and private industry. This will exploit core strength of scientists, engineers, and industrial experts who will team up to realize defense product in a much quicker time frame. The webinar will set the ball rolling for discussing the various facets for embracing and implementing SPV model.
शास्त्रों में कहा गया है एषः पंथः, यानी यही रास्ता है आत्मनिर्भर भारत।
I think if Mr. P.R. Agrawal, have you joined? Mr. P.R. Agrawal? Otherwise, anyway, me and Dr. Baba Kalyani both have joined. We are the co-chairs of this session. So without, I think, getting into the time, we can start the session so that the valedictory session, we are not intervening into it and trying to finish it off. So Dr. Baba Kalyani, welcome. Nice to have you in this session as a co-chair. Very nice of you to join this, and all the other panelists also, and all the viewers who are there part of this session. Very good morning and good afternoon to everyone. And before my saying something, I request Dr. Baba Kalyani to say on this theme of having the SPVs is the theme, and I request your initial views, and then I will say, and then we take the panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. It's a great pleasure to be with you as a co-chair on this very important topic. And we heard the Honorable Prime Minister in this in the morning session, inaugural session. And I think the directives are very clear that the various provisions that have been put in the budget that was presented by the Honorable Finance Minister included a process for creating SPVs with industry and other organizations, along with DRDO, using DRDO's technology. And I think that's a great idea.
Our own experience with DRDO, as you are well aware, has been excellent in this area. And I have a small presentation that I would like to make on this SPV. So as whenever you say so, I would request SIDM to please put the presentation.
Okay. Before getting into the presentation, I'll just give a couple of points from my side. Special purpose vehicle. This is the one what the Honorable Finance Minister has announced. Very important move for all the systems which are maybe large, medium, or small, whichever it is, but which are very critical, which have the large potential for the country and also for exports. This, I think, definitely we should get into the special purpose vehicle model. Whether industry and DRDO, industry and DRDO and DPSUs or industry and DPSUs, that details can be worked out. So once we think that this is SPV, the questions what actually at this session, Honorable Prime Minister said more of listening, getting the more and more ideas from all the audience and the people which are actually practical and pragmatic how to implement it. So the top level is what are the types of systems we should take into SPV, how SPV structure should be, what are the various mechanisms of funding the SPV, and how the SPV will be getting the orders, and how to get industry as into it, how to select that industry, how the quality assurance agency, how the skill set gets into the SPV. These are all the some of the issues which I think we should address, and end of it we should be able to get it, and we should be able to consolidate and everything see. Also, there is a mail which is created because everybody won't be able to speak today within the given time of this 1 hour plus. So suggestions.drdo@gov.in. I repeat again, suggestions.drdo@gov.in. So people can send all their ideas and inputs into that, whoever is not able to put in or whoever is not able to clearly put in. So with that, I think we can start. Dr. Baba, if you have a presentation, quickly you can present. I request everyone to be very brief, focused on the sessions, probably about everyone 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. Can somebody put up my presentation from SIDM? Next slide, please. I think as you said, Dr. Reddy, the SPV concept has been very clearly enunciated by you as well as in the budget speech. And the whole idea is how do we create an enabling environment for Aatmanirbharta through these SPV systems. We all know that 68% allocation to domestic industry, 25% defense R&D budget, industry partnership with DRDO through SPV models for development of critical weapon systems. And it should, in our opinion, it should satisfy these 4 conditions: vocal for local, defense R&D, making frontier technologies happen, and creating a base for exports. But the most important part of SPV, in my opinion, in the long run, is your financing science today to create an SPV. And when I say finance science, I mean the technologies that are with DRDO or other organizations, that is science. And once the SPVs are created and they become successful, then they will create the finance to further finance science in the future. So that is the kind of concept that we are looking at. Next slide, please. We have a problem with the slides.
Go back.
Go back. Yeah, okay. So there are 3 things that we have to look for, and then we have to create a process for that. First is technology. It's very clear what kind of technologies we should be looking at. mostly futuristic technologies, and most important, it should be Indian intellectual property. It should not be some foreign intellectual property coming in and creating technology. And in terms of manufacturing, both development and industrialization, this is very critical, but this is also fully dependent on who is giving the orders for the products that we are going to make in the SPV. And as you said, Dr. Reddy, there has to be clarity. So we need to make sure that our armed forces and services are involved in this process of selecting the product and creating the SPV. There is some problem with the slide at the other end, but I'll just say that through my chart here. When we say SPV model, industry, DRDO, and other institutions, we are looking at design and development, concurrent design engineering, compressed development times, reduced number of trials, series production, SPOC for life cycle support, spares and maintenance, and exports. And I believe this whole SPV concept creates 3-4 very key benefits. One, the whole system can be done at a much lower cost than what one organization can do, because there's a sharing of resources that will happen both human, knowledge-wise, and facility-wise. Number two, SPVs can be housed in either industry or in DRDO or in the other institutions. So no separate infrastructure is required for that. And I believe that the three organizations are three partners. There are two partners who will be involved in the SPV. The 1 + 1 will really become 11. It will unleash the potential of the public-private partnership. Next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, as I think the positives are very clear here. We have listed out certain programs that could be suggested for SPV. Of course, it is up to other people to suggest other programs. Imperatives for making this happen. Project viability has to be ensured. Guaranteed orders with minimum order quantity. Selection, development, order for a DRDO program. Sumoto proposals. And of course, how do we fund this? Equity structure and funding. This becomes an important aspect that needs to be, we need to find a solution for that. And customers ab initio involvement in the program. We need whoever is the customer, which is Army, Navy, Air Force, or Home Ministry or whatever, they need to be involved right from day one into the program. These are some of the programs which are suitable for SPV. Programs have to be complicated enough, sophisticated enough, so that we can use the whole knowledge potential that India has to offer through its various institutions, with DRDO and other institutions, to really get into futuristic products. And last slide. This is I think this will allow us to outdo the future together. That's the conclusion I'd like to make. Dr. Reddy, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Baba. Gave a elaborate point on the SPV. You have also thrown the questions to all the other panelists and the people who are viewing this. May I request now Mr. Ashish Rajavamshi from the CEO and President Adani Defense. Mr. Ashish Rajavamshi.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
So, good afternoon, and thanks for the honor for us to participate in this important webinar. I just want to start. This is a moment of pride for us, having heard the Honorable Prime Minister this morning and his vision as we move towards self-reliance going forward. So the topic we are discussing is important, but I first want to congratulate Dr. Reddy and DRDO because the initial foundation and the steps which were important to move to SPV through the DCPP initiative have already been taken. So for me, SPV is one level beyond DCPP. And what has been happening in the last couple of years in DCPP is a development cum production partner initiative where the industry and the DRDO have been collaborating on future ready technologies almost in a seamless manner. So number of things Mr. Kalyani mentioned, I think are getting addressed as part of the DCPP initiative. Now, as we look at indigenous research or joint research going forward, what does an SPV need to do over and above DCPP? So a couple of suggestions or inputs. Number one, I think the very risk appetite of a SPV or any program conceptualized in SPV is different from a build to spec or a build to print program. So the DNA, the vision, the kind of players who would like to participate in SPV have to be very carefully chosen. This is not a typical L1 program that I'm setting up an SPV for a specific technology and let me choose a person based on his L1 capability. This requires a long-term vision, this requires perseverance, and this also requires investment risk appetite, number one. Number two, what should be the scope and who should participate? There are two parts of the scope. One is incremental research and second is fundamental research. Incremental research is what we are already experiencing as part of DCPP. We are currently working on the D4 program along with DRDO, and it's almost a code development program on a platform which is 90% prepared by DRDO. For me, fundamental is how do we look at the future? And what Honorable Prime Minister also mentioned in this morning, rather than trying to have a Me Too technology, which Israel and US are also doing, how do we bypass and leapfrog and look at some of these technologies where India leads rather than India follows? And with the focus we have on the drones and the counter drones is definitely one big area which comes out. For the last 5 years, for example, if I take parallels from Tesla, they have been working on autonomous vehicles. If we talk about surveillance capability in the sky, in drones, one of the key capability which is required is anti-collision. If we want to use the same drones for logistics purposes, we want to use the same drones for agri and other purposes, it's almost a highway in the sky, the integration of UTM. So if we take this example for India, which is going to be more applicable for any other country, some of these technologies can be prioritized for us to lead. The third important thing is, how do we make this a success? One of the limitations of the DCPP program is there's a very strong partnership between industry and DRDO, but for some reason, the customer is not there. And what happens is we have started to develop a program and then we keep getting inputs from the customer. Oh, you know, my requirement is X, my requirement is Y, my requirement is Z. And it becomes difficult to, take it to the next level. So how do we ensure that my customer, my forces have a skin in the game from day one? Is very important that forces along with DRDO, along with industry are forming a tripartite SPV. And forces cannot wriggle out after 3 years, let me go and do a global buy of this technology, because that's a failure of this whole program. And we have seen this happening in Make One earlier also. Number 4, finance. I think it's an important issue. The entity should not be structured as a public sector entity. It has to be a private entity. It could be a 51-49, where the 51% equity is coming from the private sector, and the 49% can come jointly from DRDO and forces. And the reason I say this is, it should not be coming under the CVC guidelines. Yeah, being very, very candid on this platform. Because once we start applying the public sector processes and CVC guidelines, the very reason of going into fundamental research will be compromised. You can't show outcome in every research programs. Statistically, 80% of the programs will not yield any result also. And if on a daily basis, the public sector processes are driving some of these things, the industry will actually get demotivated. Fourth, which is the work share. I think it's a complementary set what Baba Kalyani also mentioned. The speed of execution, management of supply chain, ensuring we can look into the future, all comes from the industry. The deep research capability, what DRDO has developed, what the labs have developed, actually provides a true complementarity going forward. So I think it's a great platform. We are highly committed, and we again congratulate DRDO and all the participants on an excellent initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajavamshi. I think you have touched upon the core issues and gave definite suggestions. I request you to send a little more detailed thing to the mail so that these particular points can be taken forward. Now, may I request Mr. Gautam Mehra and Mr. Shashank Tripathi from PwC to give their perspective in the overall global scenario.
Thank you. Thank you for this milestone day where we are collaborating with the industry, the government, and the MOD to make sure that the future of our defense industry is secure and the future of our nation is also secure. And the recent happenings in Ukraine make us this job even more important. My perspectives will be laced by three experiences. One, as a strategy leader for PwC, I've been working on strategy projects in aerospace and defense for a considerable number of time. Secondly, we've had some very informal discussions also under the aegis of the DRDO with the nature of the SPV. And thirdly, I'm currently delivering a fairly large strategy project for a defense public sector unit. So I also understand some of the downstream possibilities and challenges that research and development always poses. And my remarks are broadly in three buckets. One is, what should the nature of the R&D be? And Mr. Kalyani eloquently touched upon some of that. The second is, what should be the nature of the SPV or the relationship? And thirdly, if R&D is going to be successful, what could we do downstream? The first one is in terms of the nature of warfare. As you know, the nature of warfare, and the Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister himself was very agile in outlining that the nature of warfare is changing extremely fast. In fact, during the course of a battle, warfare strategies are changing, the technology is changing so fast that one has to be very agile. Now, we believe that the future for the next 10 to 20 years should be broadly discussed along two wide streams. One is kinetic R&D, which is guns, ammunition, tanks, planes, and the other non-kinetic R&D. And non-kinetic R&D, I would argue, is something that India can take a leadership if we excite the private sector more so, because we do have a software advantage. And while we may not have the same advantage, let's say China has today in AI, we believe that with the right efforts, we can get there. So broadly speaking, we see a number of things which are happening with respect to some of the things which were discussed in the previous session of high-end manufacturing, where I would argue we could also take the support of some friendly nations to catch up. But I think we can take global leadership if we can put R&D money into non-kinetic R&D, because the future warfare will be very agile. For instance, cyber was mentioned by the Prime Minister himself, but also things such as artificial intelligence, which the previous speaker also mentioned. And the nature of warfare is moving very rapidly towards non-kinetic, especially as warfare pivots towards the Indian Ocean. And as we all know, over the last 10 years, the Atlantic, although this has been rectified over the last 24 hours, but has been increasingly about what is a threat that a certain country poses in this part of the world. So that's my first plea, that we should relook at what should R&D be doing for the next 10 to 15 years, because the rapid shift in technology is also making us look at warfare in a very different level. Platforms are changing, agile warfare is here with us, etc. The second piece which we should deliberate on, and I think has been touched upon by previous speakers, what should the nature of this partnership be? The nature of the special purpose vehicle. And of course, there are 4 or 5 key elements to that which should inform that. And this may be too short a time to discuss this fully. The first is where I started, which is what is the nature of technology that we have to engineer here. As was said, there is 2 types, more fundamental R&D and more application-oriented R&D, both in kinetic and non-kinetic. The second is, what should be the IP regime? Because as has been pointed out numerous times by private sector players, that the IP regime has to vest in a certain way so that we are not disturbed by that later. Third is, what is the nature of funding? Fourth is the nature of and governance of the structures. And Ashish previously mentioned that it should be a governance structure whereby private sector has majority control, so that rules are that of the private sector, which allows agile information, which allows agile ways of working. And finally, how do you make sure that that R&D flows into the defense forces faster, better, cheaper, by having testing facilities. We have recently done some work for the MOD on the defense testing labs. Therefore, this is the place where I think we should look at. This requires a deeper discussion. We've had some initial points of views, and we'd be very keen to bring our resources, both as an advisory company as of R&D, as well as the current possibilities that are within the confines of what the government can or cannot do. And finally, and very briefly, how does this R&D flow into the armed forces quickly without necessarily the delays that traditionally have, by having testing facilities, by having some of the things that we believe the armed forces look forward to. And I was hearing the Deputy Chief talk about how they're open to some of the possibilities of having ranges or trials, tests, which are able to get weapon systems deployed in the areas that they are needed rapidly and positively. I'd end by saying that I think this is an important time to consider. It's not only an important seminar, but it's happening in an important year, which is the 75th anniversary of India's independence. I think the next 25 years will define whether India is going to be a global leader. And that definition will start, as the Honorable Prime Minister said, not just by importing or by copying, but by innovating, by actually having original weapon systems that we can take forward in this country. So those words, sir, thank you very much for having us here. We are very much committed to this. As the Honorable Prime Minister said, this is not just a commercial opportunity for a firm like PwC. This is a nation building opportunity, and we are committed to that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shashank Tripathi. Very good, important points. As you rightly said, this is not one actually which can finish off in 5 minutes, but only salient points you have touched upon. So the details, you please send a mail, or when you are here again, we can have detailed discussion on this. This, as you said, we had some amount of discussion, and we need to discuss a lot. And the testing things also we can discuss. As you know that we have made all our test facilities open and put it in the website. In fact, in spite of pandemic last year, about 300 industries have used these test facilities, and we should make it more and more open whenever the weapons and all the things are coming into picture. And structure of the SPV and nature of the SPV and partnership, and particularly the work share is very important, which we need to sit together and discuss. Meanwhile, whatever ideas you have, please send it to us, and then we can look into it. Thank you.
Just one 15-second intervention. We are currently doing a defense testing lab project for the MOD. Through this forum, I would invite anyone who's interested to participate in that fully, because it also requires private sector participation. Once again, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. May I request Mr. Madhavan, who is the chairman, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, a major organization in the country which is working in the aeronautics, an important DPSU. Mr. Madhavan, please, for your views, just 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, sir. It's always a privilege to speak in such a forum, and it's also great that I get the last one to speak, so I can touch upon all the points raised by others. As Dr. Kalyani as well as Ashish was telling, there are certain issues when we raise an SPV. Of course, the budget has been very exciting for us, especially the 25% defense, this one for the R&D that has been left with us for the industry to work on. So keeping that in mind, there are certain things that we are planning for the SPV. Now, if you look at SPV, unlike any other general company, it is a legal entity under the Companies Act 2013, but it has a requirement that it should have a well-defined and a specific business, and it cannot be something that has all the businesses that is there in the memorandum of understanding. So it is meant for a specific business, with the sponsors being either the Government of India through DRDO or a DPSU and the private companies. As brought out by all the speakers before, that the company should be a private company, and we agree with that. It cannot be a government entity fully because of not only CVC, but CAG and other so many other audits coming in. And also the procurement processes and all will be very difficult for us if it is working as a government company. So there are some issues on that. So the partnership that has to be there will be a DRDO or maybe a DPSU or both of them put together, but not exceeding 50% or 50.5%. That's the upper limit for that. And the rest of it coming from the private industry. So that is the equity holding on this. Second part of it is that to distance the sponsors and the SPV, so that because of any reason, if anybody backs out, the SPV and its objective should not be lost in the process. So we have to see that a part of the financing comes from the debt. Now, we look at couple of SPVs that we are now trying to formalize, one of them being AMCA, and the other one being the IMRH project, that is the middle 12 ton weight category helicopter. These two, we want to take it to the SPV route, keeping the fact that
IMRH, which is 12 ton, and AMCA medium range.
It's a 12 ton helicopter which will be replacing the Mi-17s with a definitive order that we feel that will be above 400 numbers. So that gives you quite a good market there. So IMRH and AMCA, these are the first two that we are trying to bring in through the SPV route. We have been working along with DRDO on the AMCA project and also on how to bring it through the SPV route. And most probably very in the near future, DRDO will issue an EOI on that. The main points in that is that first of all, the SPV will have more than one industry partner other than both DRDO and HL, and the total shareholding by both these organizations will not exceed 50.5%, so that it is still a private company. Second thing is that debt to equity ratio, we are putting it as around 2 to 1, so that we are distancing the sponsors and the SPV and keeping it away, so that we have, in case of any one backing out, the company continues to run. Second part of it is, of course, this brings in certain amounts of problems also. It's not that SPV route can become very easily, we can do it. The problems are there in the sense that the SPV cannot raise debt based on the sponsor's assets. So the SPV either has to create the assets, or they have to ensure that the financing institute has a say in the cash flows of future. So we have worked it out on that, especially if you increase the equity part of it, the returns on the equity should be, which is higher than the debt interest rates. So we are seeing that if I keep a beta which is equivalent to what is HAS beta, that is 0.84 or something as of now, the requirement on returns on the equity will be around 13.5%, whereas the debt is around 9.1%, keeping in mind that it is a risky investment for the financial company, financial banks also, for them to put this kind of money inside that. So that's the financing part of it that we are planning about. Second thing, there are a couple of things that is required from the government as guarantees for the SPV to function. One, that there will be a fixed order quantity, and it should be known from the beginning, from the start of the SPV. Suppose it is 150 aircrafts or 400 helicopters, whatever it is, has to be told to the SPV upfront by the government. Second part of it is that once the design development is over, there will be no delay in placing the orders, because any delay in that means the SPV will face a problem in paying back the debt as well as the investment that they have done on it. So these two things are the guarantees minimum required from the government. Third, in case of AMCA, of course, the DRDO is taking up the R&D part of it. So a lot of money is invested by DRDO into the R&D of the aircraft. And in case of IMRH, there is no government funding for the R&D. So that makes it a bit difficult, but then we can think about a VGF for that particular thing, so that per helicopter, the government gives you that kind of money, so that your total project is in the net positive. In case of AMCA, we have got a ROA of more than, I think, 13.5%, so it looks quite good on paper. And secondly, it is not only the way that we are calculating, because there is a lot of intangible benefits that's coming out of this. The MROs definitely goes back to the SPV only, because SPV has to support the platform for a long time to come. Secondly, the spares, the ground support equipments, so many other things comes in. And of course, export is another part of it, which has not been accounted for in the calculation. So these are things that will come, and this gives a very good area, way for the private industry to enter into the business, where only the DPSUs and the DRDOs were there earlier. One more point that I would like to bring out is regarding the what kind of why SPV is required as compared to say DCPP or IDEX routes, or because that is the place where you are putting in smaller amounts of money. Let us say 1 crore to 10 crores or something like that into each of these development. SPV is meant for bigger platforms, as well as where the money involved is in thousands of crores. So you cannot have an SPV, which is a company set up for a product, for a smaller product. So we should have it for the bigger products. So it can be a platform like this, or it could be even for naval platforms, or even for engines, aero engines. So this is another area where an SPV can be set up. In case that 110 kilonewton comes up, that also will be planned through an SPV route. So it won't be that it's DRDO does it and HL manufactures it. So it will all come through the SPV route in future. And of course, to the extent why we are there into the SPV is because we bring in the initial technologies, including the DPSUs. We should like to consider ourselves also into as similar to DRDO in the sense many of the cases, like in helicopters, we are bringing in the technologies. Second part of it that I want to highlight is that the private industry also should have belief and confidence in the Indian developments, whether it is DRDO or DPSUs. Our platforms are working well. LCA is one of the examples that I will quote. And secondly, we also are good in helicopters. We have got 3 of the platforms running fine now. So there is not much of a risk involved in the subsequent development of a new platform through the SPV route, even if it is an IMRH or it's an AMCA. So that belief from the industry is required. A little bit of nation building, of course, has to be brought in, because maybe the values don't look good on paper as compared to the other industries. So, but in the long run, this is going to help all of us and the nation to bring in the private industry into the business, so that the effort that is being put in from that industry also is taken into account. And the last point is that as a partner in an SPV,
we are running out of time, please.
Just last point I'm saying. As a partner in SPV, we also expect the partners to bring in their technologies or their own R&D into the picture. And accordingly, we should be able to apportion the IPs on who is developing the particular technologies. That is one of the questions asked by Mr. Ashish. So that's, I think, is what I want to tell you.
Send the mail detailed with your points. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Madhavan. Very valuable sessions. Now I request Professor Ishan Sharma from IIT Kanpur. Professor Ishan Sharma?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, Professor Sharma. Please.
Okay, thank you. So it's exciting to participate in this discussion on innovative mechanisms like the SPV that aim to position India as a global leader in defense production. So we have been hearing many excellent ideas from industry leaders. So for a change of pace, as an academic and a researcher and an engineer, I will try and convey my thoughts about how this newly envisaged financial and organizational structure of the SPV can help invigorate and nurture long-term productive research and innovation in defense-specific areas in institutes of higher education, because they are supposed to be one of the partners of an SPV, possibly. So the first point has actually been raised earlier by the Defense Secretary and also by Lieutenant General Dayal, and that has to do with the building in competitiveness and also efficiency in the SPV. Separately, I think there is also a need to have redundancy in defense R&D and production. So this will compensate in case one of the partners is unable to function, or we have to scale up production or research in any area. So this and by allowing multiple companies who bring in the same expertise to be partners in an SPV, and you can also allow multiple research groups to participate in the SPV. And over time, we can outline several checkpoints and evaluations which can be done, and then some of the companies or some of the research groups may be curtailed, their participation may be curtailed. So this will, I think, bring in a lot of excellent competition and urgency in the delivery of the aims of the SPV. And something similar is actually carried out in other countries. And I guess this, the example is Russia actually. And what they do is they do not allow funding. They do not allow all partners, especially the company partners, to be involved in all parts of the goals of the SPV. Example, design and development, production, supply, maintenance. These are not given right at the beginning. You give them design and development, you look at their performance, then you give them production, then supply, and then maintenance. So all phases are not provided right at the beginning. So this will, I think, bring in excellent competition and increase efficiency at both ends, the research end and the delivery end. The second point I have to make is actually coming from, because I'm an academic, and that has to do with participation or creation of SPVs in low technology readiness level and futuristic defense projects. And this has been highlighted by several speakers, and even Dr. Baba Kalyani also mentioned the importance of futuristic technologies. So let me give you a quick example. About 10 years ago, the army expressed an interest in small artillery shells smart artillery shells that can fly themselves to a target. But this is not an active R&D area in India, and it will require almost completely fresh development. It's not incremental research. And for this, you require sustained funding over several years before even a low fidelity prototype can be developed. So this is something which is ideally suited to be incubated in an academic environment. But for that to be sustainable, it has to have sustained funding over a reasonable period. And then it can be evaluated for further funding towards a high fidelity prototype. Now, for this development to be efficient and effective, it should be partnered with an agency like DRDO that can help in testing. For example, ammunitions are not something that will be welcomed within an education institute. It may not even be permitted to bring in propellant fuels and things like that. Also, it will be useful if companies which are ultimately going to be responsible for manufacturing can be associated right at the early stages, so that they can build in capacities and advise us of how these subsystems will be created. But how do such efforts, which sometimes arise from academia, how can they get evaluated, approved, funded, and partnered? And this is where I believe SPVs can really help. The challenge I see is that it is kind of a natural human tendency to go for more mature technologies, even if you are trying to create an SPV. We are generally going to be risk averse. So, similarly, an agency like DRDO is continuously addressing Army concerns, Navy concerns, and this may just be one other item on their list, and they may not be picking it up for development right at the beginning. And this is exactly what happened with the smart artillery shell. The group at IIT Kanpur, which got together to try and do this, they have tried to pursue this for better part of a decade, and so far there seems to be no success there. So I see that there is a clear need to kind of water research at the roots, not just at the shoots. And I'm hoping that the SPVs can develop mechanisms to do that. And towards this end, I have two thoughts, which you may consider. One is to increase the benefit of participation in greenfield projects. And this may be done by providing financial exemptions, exit clauses, increased downstream benefits, openness to the possibility of failure. And in case multiple company partners are allowed, the companies that enter the project at an early stage can be given some preference downstream. And this is something that can be considered. So those 2 points I have made. I'll make an additional point, which is based on my experience elsewhere. Fraunhofer institutes in Germany, they were designed to bridge research and product development. So they undertake research of direct utility. But they also work with academia for cutting edge research and for industry for applied research and production. And their funding is derived in part or wholly from these projects. So this keeps them hungry and active. And is it possible to formulate some SPVs associated with government defense research labs along these models, so that their running expenses perhaps are obtained from projects that they pick up and deliver? And these projects will, naturally link academics and companies, and they will be in the area of the R&D labs. So this is just an idea. So I think I will close. Sorry.
Yeah, I said thank you.
Okay. Oh, if I have 10 more seconds, I'd like to make a final point.
Okay, please.
Okay. The final point I had was about manpower. It's not really connected directly to economics in some sense, but again, it is. So every year, about 8 lakh students from educational institutes travel abroad and spend about 45,000 crores as fees to foreign universities. One of the reasons identified for them doing this is that they are unable to find opportunities in their core engineering areas. And SPVs can perhaps be a vehicle for this. We will retain engineers we train in engineering as engineers. They won't shift to banking sectors. Not that the sector is bad or anything, but it's just that's not what they're trained for. So if SPVs can design career paths for students who work on projects connected to that SPV right from the beginning when they were in the academic environment, then this student will be retained as an engineer in his area of expertise, and the defense industry will benefit by receiving a trained professional. So finally, I'm done, and I would like to end by saying that as a researcher interested in military engineering in India, this call for Aatmanirbhar Bharat really touches me at a very core level, and I have been honored to be part of this discussion. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Ishan Sharma. You may send a detailed mail to that suggestions.drdo@gov.in. Otherwise, also to us directly also. Thank you. Thank you. Very good points. Okay, and now I request Mr. Munjal Shah from Paras Defense and Aerospace. Mr. Munjal Shah, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please.
So good afternoon, everyone. At first, we would like to thank our Honorable Prime Minister and our Defense Minister for getting a lot of recognition to our defense sector. Also, we would like to thank Chairman DRDO and other seniors for giving us this opportunity to be a part of this great event. Again, thanking DRDO for giving opportunities and handholding all aspiring companies wanting to work in the interest of the nation. So we have a small presentation. We would like to start. Next slide, please. SPVs by industries with DRDO and other organizations. Next slide. As Mr. Henry Ford says, if everyone is moving forward together, success takes care of itself. We believe that this idea of SPV is a great thing, and it will really see a great success partnership between DRDO and DPSUs and ordnance factories and industries like SMEs, MSME, and medium and large scale companies. So next slide, please. We believe that DRDO should be a part of most of the SPVs or each and every SPV because they have cutting edge technologies, exceptionally talented and knowledgeable scientists, great infrastructure to support development and testing. Defense companies, domain expert manpower, rich experience in production of defense technologies and established supply chain. Industries for commercializing defense technologies, also proactive towards investing for development and scalability, and also access to global technologies and resources. Next slide, please. The benefits of SPV between DRDO, defense companies, and industries together will make things happen very, very fast as compared to other times. So we believe there will be faster, concurrent, and relevant technology development, accountability, single point of window for design, manufacturing, testing, and product support, self-reliance, lesser dependence on foreign technologies, giving flexibility to adapt and improve dynamically. Next slide, please. The technologies that we believe will have great potential or should really be worked upon. Yes, there would be people working on this, but there should be more people working on these technologies in partnership in SPV models like high power laser systems, high power electromagnetic weapon systems, next generation radars, unmanned large unmanned combat aerial vehicle, strategic space systems, and quantum communications. So we believe these technologies should be really worked upon with SPVs. Next slide, please. The proposed, we believe that the shareholding should be, this is just a tentative model where DRDO could be up to 25% as a shareholder. There could be industry or maybe the PSU holding the rest 75%, or if there is a need for getting a third-party investor, where a lot of people today are keen to invest into defense companies or into defense technologies, they could come in and they could come in at 26%. So this we feel can be one of the models, like 25% DRDO, 26% investing agency or investing company, and industry 49%, where everybody will be able to have their interest covered to the fullest. Next, please. We also believe that in an SPV, there should be an independent audit company like the Big Four or the next line of people to be a part of this from day one. This will ensure that the timelines and the budgets are in line. The timelines are met. The budgets are also we are meeting the budget requirements. We are also able to also regulate the deployment of funds and also manage compliance and stakeholders' interest. So this appointment of an audit committee in the SPV will take care of everything that otherwise we may worry of. So this also will be a big help in the SPV. Next slide, please. So thank you very much, Satish Reddy sir, for giving us this opportunity to present in this big forum. And we look forward to working with DRDO and everyone in a much bigger way. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal Shah. You may send this presentation to us on the mail ID what is given. Now, yes, before going to the various suggestions which would have come, and Mr. Detapat and Mr. Rangarajan and Mr. Sumit to take over, Dr. Baba Kalyani, you like to say anything, and or otherwise you want to say in the end?
I just like to make a short comment, Dr. Reddy. First of all, I think everybody has a pretty good idea of how the SPV structure should be. The one point that I didn't see come out in the discussion is you can't have 3 people trying to manage a SPV. The responsibility of managing the SPV has to be with one entity. And I think that is very important. Otherwise, it just, that whole marriage system won't work. That's a small point I wanted to make.
Okay, thank you. Over to Mr. Rangarajan of Data Patterns and Mr. Sumit.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Satish Reddy, for having us here. I have a number of questions which is there, but before that, I have a couple of suggestions. Slightly, it's already discussed a bit, but a bit more clarity to this. It was brought by Baba Kalyani that, in this presentation, he made a lot of comments on which programs can be taken up SPV. Another thing was taken as surveillance systems. What generally people tend to do is look at new programs and says, okay, we'll take a SPV on that for developing new programs with DRDO. But also we should look at the other markets. The idea is what Prime Minister says is, make it in India for the world. There are opportunities within India for not only new programs but also upgrades. In one of the points is surveillance, which is brought up by Mr. Baba Kalyani. We have fortunately, unfortunately, India has a number of air platforms, very different types of platforms, and we have all of them obsolescence and upgrade requirements here. Now, if we do this in a SPV, because there's a domain-specific requirement here, build SPV on a domain which is 20-25 years existence, we need to build cutting-edge systems. We can take the existing market in India, use it as a prototypes, and also export it, because a number of countries have similar programs and products. We can also look at SPV not necessarily as new programs, but competencies we built up in India for upgrades, which is also a market. And finally, what are we doing here? We are looking at business and business scalability and growth on a competitive model on cutting-edge technology, which is what India wants. So this is the first point I wanted to make. We have similar such one. I'll just give you an example here. The second point is that who should be the SPV partner? Now, this point is brought up by Mr. Arun Bhattani, and also from Adani, Mr. Raghuvanshi also brought this up. So it has to be based on competencies. It should not be based on, capital. Like, capital can be brought in, but competencies should be the basic, requirement to build on an SPV. So these are 2 points. Then with this, I'll start reading out the questions.
Yeah, please. Please go ahead.
Yeah. First question is from Mr. Nishant Kumar. any separate allocation and vision for cyber defense?
There will not be any separate allocation, but there is a good amount of importance and allocation in that is being will be given or will be considered definitely for the cyber defense. And the model also, even it can be also part of one of these models also. Anyway, we won't be answering everything. You can read out the points and then we can consolidate because it is difficult to explain everything. Please go ahead.
A second question is from Mr. Sandeep Sinha. Can we have a single point of contact from DRDO in each vertical to have smooth conversation?
It is DGPCSI.
The third point, which is
BI square TM. These are the contact points always for the industry. Next.
It will also be said. The third question is relevant. Mr. Jain Patil has asked this question. Whom does the industry apply for R&D funding?
Yeah, that is what actually is asking question. We are asking for the suggestions and we should be coming back with the mechanism. Once the mechanism is in place for the mechanism, he has to apply. He has to come out. Yeah.
Abhay Falke. Does DRDO assist entrepreneurs in showcasing the products for defense? Not all these questions are really SPV driven.
Yeah,
but
for
questions are
showcasing product. See, one thing is DRDO has been hand-holding till now, and the question is about showcasing. So this also actually we are working out in the government how we can help in the showcasing also.
If the questions are not related to SPV, maybe we can post it to suggestions.drdo@gov.in.
You please focus on SPV questions because otherwise it will be diversified and we won't be able to focus on the subject.
Yes, but there are a number of such questions non-SPV. I'll read a few, then we will take up SPV related questions if there are more. Will it be possible for Government of India to provide high performance computing facility to startups and MSME?
Okay. Taken.
Okay. Then Mr. Rajneesh Pratap Singh, is there any demand for EV based technology in defense? Again, then Hardik Someshwar has given a suggestion. Should have a technology development roadmap with well-defined who develops and which model. Again, Mr. Chetan Mistry, what are expectations from academia? Will industries be compelled to work with academia? I don't think there's any compelling thing, but anyway, sir, you can answer. This is a good question from Mr. Jain Patil. How LRUs are made under R&D funding? Will the R&D funds be allowed for complete system development?
And these are the question suggestions. Actually, Mr. Jain Patil is asking questions. He can make a suggestion. Yes, systems are supposed to be developed. That is one of the important things under the SPV and other models.
How will it be ensured that private sector is also equitably tracked as PSUs? Captain Girish.
Now it is actually right now is already considered the private partners, private industries and DPSUs are equally. Even in the existing DPSU model, the DCPP model, equal opportunity is given to both private industry and DPSUs as of now already. And same thing continues. And any other anomalies are there also can be brought in and we should be looking into it definitely.
The SP Shukla, SIDM, he wants to have a 30-minute intervention, 30-second intervention. So he can probably.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Shukla.
Thank you so much for conducting a wonderful session, thought-provoking, idea-stimulating. Mathwan Sahab made some valid observations, but I really enjoyed the last one on education with so many of our bright engineers going abroad, not getting an opportunity. If there is something here, we will send some suggestions from our side also. I think this definitely will be a worthy use of SPV funds. Sir, I had one question and suggestion will follow in due course through proper channel, as you said. For the same product, can there be two SPVs? Because someone can say in Ministry of Defense or Finance that is duplication of funds. But I do believe that competition is always good. In every major platform, two players will be good for the country the way most countries do. I'll stop here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Narajan may continue.
Yeah, there are a few more questions that are more relevant here. One is, can two different systems be taken up by an SPV?
This is again a point to be debated. If the same SPV can do one more task, and that is the SPV, that is where the selection mechanism comes into picture. In the selection, the same two partners there, probably we should think of it. But anyway, these are all debatable points. We can't be answering them.
Okay. What will be the life of an SPV? The other question has come up.
Okay.
What is the mechanism of getting assured orders by the SPV? Of course, this is fundamental to the SPV. This question has been posed.
Right in the beginning, Dr. Baba Kalyani and Mr. Rajavanshi also mentioned.
Yes. How can industry become part of an already running SPV sometime in future?
Okay.
Will the DCPP model of DRDO and SPV model both remain operational? Or
I think so, because SPVs, see, the DCPP can happen for very, very small things and things like that also. There may not be some very large numbers of orders and all that also, but SPV will be where you have a good amount of marketing available, potential available within the country, outside the country and all that. For other things, DCPP has to continue.
okay, Mr. Apparao from Centrum has asked this question. Will there be a minimum size for SPV in terms of equity?
And that is what to be debated and decided.
Yes, I think, most of the questions are non-SPV based, so I'm not reading them at the present moment. Maybe they can send those questions to the suggestions.drdo@gov.in. This can be taken up. I can give the floor back to you, sir, to you and Mr. Baba Kalyani to take this session further.
Thank you. I request Dr. Baba Kalyani for the concluding remarks. We have another, I think, 3 to 4 minutes time.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I think it's been a very exhilarating session with many ideas and many suggestions that have come and also the questions that have come in. I think by and large, people have understood the concept of an SPV. I just want to put a couple of thoughts in place before we operationalize this, as the Honorable Prime Minister said, from 1st of April. SPV is a concept that should create products, futuristic products that are useful to our country from a futuristic point of view, where we can also create a demand for exporting this product. So we create our own technology. I think the fundamental issue here is, unless and until you create your own technology and your own intellectual property, you really will not be able to create a product that is differentiated as far as we are concerned in India and as also exportable. So I think we need to understand this point very clearly. The second point is, we can't have 100 SPVs. Okay, SPVs will be far and few in areas which are again futuristic, areas that are important for national security and national defense processes, and also where there is a reasonable amount of confidence within our scientific community, DRDO, our educational system, that it can, within a reasonable period of time, create the product. I mean, that is how SPVs have to work. And I mean, everywhere in the world, whether it's DARPA or XYZ, that's the way it works. The process for selecting SPV partners is something that needs to get evolved. I think there are many suggestions that have come, and hopefully it'll get evolved as we go forward. I think Mr. Madhavan made a very good suggestion from HAL. He has already 2 projects for SPVs. Of course, everybody's heard about the AMCA engine program. It's been well publicized, but I think that's a program, that kind of a program would probably require a consortium approach of different industry partners who have different technology domains to put together subsystem, component subsystems, etc., to make an engine. That's my view. So one must look at SPVs where you could also have consortiums to do things. And of course, the second project that you talked about, helicopters to replace the Mi-17 helicopters, sounds very interesting. And I presume the technology of this will come out of HAL and DRDO for doing this. So that's already two very important projects that we have on the SPV map that has been put forward. And I think there could be some smaller project. I like the idea of Professor Ishan, who talked about targeted ammunitions. I think DRDO is already working in this area to some extent, but this could also be a project-based, I mean, doesn't have to be an SPV, but a project-based approach with IIT to see if some industries are interested in pursuing this. So overall, I think if we can work on this and create, bring in more suggestions, and in the next 1 month, create a roadmap and have a couple of SPVs on the ground in the next few months, this would really do a great service to this nation. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, if you allow me for a very brief intervention, I think I was slightly disconnected when Mr. Shukla said something, but was it the talent issue that was discussed?
No. I think, Mr. Shashank Tripathi, we have already crossed our time. Honorable RM will be joining. I think your point, you may send it to us.
Okay, we'll do that.
Okay, right.
I just wanted to say talent is equally crucial in this endeavor, but I'll just rest to that. Thank you.
Understood. Listen. So thank you very much, all the people, for joining and giving the views. A lot of important points have come, and I request all of you to send the mail, and we will consolidate, we will go through it, and then we will also work on the points what have emerged and consolidate them and bring them into a few selected points. And I think very soon, let us all have a meeting once again with selected people, and then we can have a deeper discussion on those points which have emerged, and then we can consolidate them and take into a firm action points and mechanisms. That's what I suggest. Very quickly, all of us, let us have a meeting wherein we can discuss on this select consolidated points which have emerged from this. Thank you very much, all of you joining. So nice of you, and please send the details in the mail. suggestions.drdo@gov.in. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have to give.
Following.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Please be connected. The valedictory session will start in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Captain Banerjee, can you hear us? Captain Banerjee,
Yes.
can you hear us?
Mr. Jain, please speak.
Are we audible?
Yeah, we were audible.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are awaiting the arrival of the Honorable Raksha Mantri. I request you all to kindly wait. His arrival will start the valedictory session. Thank you. मैं माननीय रक्षा मंत्री जी से वैलिडिक्टरी सेशन आरंभ करने की आज्ञा चाहता हूँ. Good afternoon, everybody. After I had a long day of brainstorming and discussion, now I will request the moderators one by one to present in 5 minutes, sum up the gist of the session. First, I will like to call upon Rear Admiral Pritam Lal to sum up the session of progressive increase in the capital procurement budget for domestic industry, opportunities and challenges. Over to Rear Admiral Lal.
Thank you, Group Captain Anupam. Honorable Raksha Mantri ji, Honorable Raji Raksha Mantri ji, respected Defense Secretary, senior officers of the Ministry of Defense, captains of the Indian defense industry, both public and private, representatives of the R&D and academic institutions. A very good afternoon to you all. I will, in the next 5 minutes, present the takeaways from the deliberations held during the first session, session 1A. The theme of the session was progressive increase in the capital procurement budget for domestic industry, opportunities and challenges. The session was addressed by the Defense Secretary. Presentations were made by the industry, and we had interventions by the specialists, stakeholders from all organizations. The context was very clearly set. The main issue was that while we try and modernize the armed forces as per their capability plans, there is a requirement to build indigenous industry capabilities. How do we balance these without causing any delay in the capability requirements of the armed forces? The industry perspective for the enhanced budget that is there was very clear. They've seen it as more than just a mere policy continuity. In fact, it has been described as a very strong push for building capabilities in the Indian defense industry. So I come to the issues that were specifically sought to be addressed by the MOD. The first issue was, is the industry ready to absorb the increased outlay? And there was an emphatic yes. The domestic defense industry is ready to absorb the enhanced budgetary outlay. All that they need is order books. They made some suggestions and pointers with regard to practical difficulties and challenges being faced by the industry on this piece. Now, one, of course, issue that has been highlighted is that probably the private industry capability is not being adequately utilized. As of now, while the DPSUs have a order book which is 4 or 5 years of their revenue, the same is not true for the private industry. In fact, that utilization may be probably less than 25%. Another key factor that was brought in as practical difficulties is the test and trial infrastructure and test and certification agency. We have a lot of limitations on that. A lot of time is taken only in those aspects, and there is only one test certification agency. Therefore, there is a constraint of capacity which could be a challenge as we move forward to enhance the output of the domestic defense industry. There were suggestions with regard to the key measures and changes that are required to in the policies to remove the difficulties. First, of course, is to give speed to the acquisition projects which are in the pipeline. Whatever is in the final stages of the acquisition process, for example, if it is on the contract negotiation stage or contract signing stage, that could be expedited so that in the first quarter of the next financial year itself, that could be done. And secondly, those cases that are at the trial stages, if those could also be expedited so that early during the second quarter, those could be taken up. The third aspect that was brought in was private industries be given equitable share of the ordering that takes place. There are two very important points that were brought in by public industry also, and one of the major stakeholders, Indian Army. That is, that there should be an acceptance of spiral development in the sense that you start with reaching certain specifications, but if we achieve 80%, it should be acceptable in the phase 1. We could go for Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, this thing, kind of thing, so that the efforts that are put in by the industry, by the R&D, and the all stakeholders are not just set aside, they're utilized to a certain level and then built up in progressive manner so that the final product is realized. And the last point that was brought out was that there's a need to jettison the monopolies in manufacturing, design, development, as well as QA/QC. In fact, this point was across the board very strongly brought out by everyone, that there is a need to create a capacity in the private industry to augment what already exists in the DPSUs, DRDO, and QA organizations. Lastly, how to reduce the time lag in placement of orders. A few suggestions. One, of course, is not to retract the RFPs after we have gone through a whole lot of acquisition process, particularly even FET and things like that. Secondly, of course, is to one of the area which takes longest time in the acquisition process is the test and trial. And therefore, we need to expand the test and trial infrastructure. We need to have multiple test and certification agencies. And I believe already a lot of guidelines and policy interventions are being done so that, first of all, the requirement of test and trial can be optimized by using wherever possible certification method, so that things that have been already certified by accredited bodies are accepted as it is. There's one more very important point that was brought out by the Deputy Chief of Army Staff, and that is on certain level of industry discipline, which is very important when they participate in the acquisition processes of the Ministry of Defense. And that is the issue of multiple representations, and they do come in the way of decision making. They do delay the decision making. And his suggestion was that could the industry associations themselves come forward to help? And I think that needs proper thought and discussions within the industry associations to see how could they aid the whole process rather than impede the process of defense acquisitions by the Ministry of Defense. There were some good suggestions which had come. with regard to building long-term sustainable capacity in the private industries. First of them was that we need to take the SP models forward, SP model business forward, because that is the way the indigenous capacity for design, development, and manufacturing is going to get created. That is the way a very vibrant industry ecosystem, tiered industry ecosystem is going to be created. Secondly is, of course, the make projects that we should take it forward. Third, there should be a target to generate at least 15% annual growth for domestic allocations, that is budgetary allocations for domestic production. And finally, of course, there needs to be put in place a monitoring mechanism for the acquisition process, so that wherever there are any obstructions or bottlenecks which are observed by the system, those are overcome quickly. I stop at that, sir. So just for the sake of information, we had over 875 participants. Our chat box and Q&A box was full, all of which we have not been able to extract, and I'm sure we will be able to put it all together in a report and submit it to the Ministry of the Defense. Thank you very much, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Admiral Lal. Now I request Shri Abhishek Jain, Chairman SRDM Startup Forum, to summarize the session 1B, developing all-round defense R&D ecosystem in the country. Over to Mr. Jain.
Presentation, please. Next, please. Mani Raksha Mantri ji, the session was very fruitful. The first lecture was given by Chairman DRDO, and he also echoed the viewpoints of the Honorable Prime Minister that we are here to listen. And an email ID has been given to all the participants so that they can give suggestions. It was elaborated that there are many avenues of funding right now, like ERIPR, TDF schemes, DCPP in DRDO, and they can be utilized by the industry and academia. What we are thinking is a forward looking, where we want to develop disruptive technologies using the DARPA model. So that was elaborated. And then there was a lot of discussion on how SPVs would be formed with academia, industry, and DRDO all working together. So there would be a collaborate and win approach that would be followed. Next, please. The chair and co-chair of the session, they elaborated that the budget that has been allocated now, 1,300 crores, is huge. And I think the industry can really benefit from that. There are already good institutions like DRDO and CSIR who are doing R&D, and they can handhold the industry. And the R&D has to start from basic R&D up to MRO, so that we are Aatmanirbhar in all the places, whether it is basic R&D or whether it is maintenance of our own systems. And world over, the aerospace and defense projects have created many spin-offs, and I think that would also happen in India. And with that, our economy would grow. And we need to develop a culture of production. And I think the chair and co-chair also stressed that we need a collaboration between mature companies, DRDO, startup, MSMEs, all working together to create systems and subsystems. And we need to simplify finance and procurement procedures and options. Next, please. Comments from MHRD. Basically, already a lot of investment is being made in IITs, NITs, and other colleges where PhDs are being funded more than 500. Some 7 to 8 programs have been recognized, which are MTech programs in defense R&D, and 130 students are currently studying there. And the MHRD exhorted that we should take care of these students by way of internships, by way of jobs, so that they contribute to our defense ecosystem. Next, please. The industry basically wanted to say two things mainly. First is that we already have very good schemes, and funding should be increased in these schemes. And usually R&D is also fraught with risk, and we should understand this, and these should not be tackled as routine procurement. Next, please. From the PhD, CCI and Forge, the basic issue that was highlighted was that raw materials is a big problem. There are some specialized materials that are being imported and they are critical for the performance of the system. So I think in raw materials also two things need to be done. First, we should not allow traders. And second, there should be some investment in testing and certification of raw materials. And maybe a PLI scheme can be extended to this. And from the Forge, we understood that there are so many programs that are being run in the DISC and Open Challenge on IDEX. I think 111 programs have been already there. 120 plus startups have been supported. Much more would be supported now when DISC 5 also is assigned. And we can increase and broaden the purview of IDEX scheme so that many more startups and MSMEs can be supported. Next, please. This is the final slide. Some comments from the moderator side. So I think, sir, no new policy is required. किसी भी नई पॉलिसी को बनाने की आवश्यकता नहीं है. हमारे पास मेक स्कीम है, TDF है, IDEX और डेवलपमेंट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स हैं. इन्हीं का उपयोग करके 1300 करोड़ की R&D को किया जा सकता है. समय टेक्नोलॉजी में जाएगा. फंडिंग लिमिट बढ़ाई जा सकती है. तो जो स्कीम्स ऑलरेडी चल रही हैं उनका 2.0 वर्जन निकालकर फंडिंग स्कीम्स बढ़ाई जा सकती हैं. अभी तक IITs में काफी कुछ रिसर्च होता है, लेकिन वहाँ प्रोफेसर्स को और भी बहुत सारा काम होता है. यदि स्टार्टअप्स के साथ IITs काम करें, दोनों जॉइंट प्रपोजल डालें, तो स्टेबिलिटी और डेप्थ ये IITs से, NITs से, एकेडमिक से आएगा और एजिलिटी स्टार्टअप से आएगी. हमारे प्रोडक्ट जल्दी बनेंगे और इसीलिए TDF 2.0 और IDEX 2.0 with larger participation from the industry and larger funding can be there. टाइमली प्रोक्योरमेंट के लिए भी काफी चर्चा हुई. मानिए इसमें यदि पेपरलेस अप्रोच किया जाए, अभी फाइल बहुत जगह ट्रैवल करती, उसके बदले यदि डिजिटल सिग्नेचर होने लगे तो बहुत सारा समय बचाया जा सकता है. कभी कभी कंफ्यूजन भी होता है कि कौन सिग्नेचर करेगा, कैसे फाइल मूव करेगी. अगर कुछ चेकलिस्ट बना दी जाए तो उसका भी उसमें भी समय बचाया जा सकता है. IPR के बारे में चर्चा हुई, इसमें भिन्न मत हैं, लेकिन अगर गवर्नमेंट फंडिंग करेगी तो गवर्नमेंट के पास एटलीस्ट उसका मार्जिन, सरकार ने उस पर पैसा लगाया है. इससे ये भी होगा कि फॉरेन टेक्नोलॉजी की रीब्रांडिंग करने की किसी की इच्छा हो तो वो नहीं कर पाएगा, क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजी आपके पास, IP आपके पास रहेगी. बहुत सारी दुनिया सॉफ्टवेयर पर, AI पर, ML पर, इंजीनियरिंग डिजाइन पर, क्वांटम पर और सिनेरियो सिमुलेटर्स पर मूव कर रही है. हमें इस पर स्पेशल फोकस देना पड़ेगा माननीय. और अंत में इतना ही कहना चाहूंगा कि हमें लीनियंसी और टफनेस दोनों रखनी पड़ेगी. फाइनेंशियल डिसबर्समेंट, जब पैसे की बात होती है तो बहुत सारे बिल सबमिशन में स्टार्टअप्स को, MSMEs को दिक्कत आती है. इसमें आपसे अनुरोध है कि थोड़ा सा लीनियंसी बरती जाए. पर आपसे ये भी अनुरोध है कि जब टेक्निकल रिव्यू होता है तो स्टार्टअप्स हो या MSME हो, उन पर बहुत टफ हुआ जाए ताकि वो अच्छा सबसिस्टम डेवलप कर सकें और पीरियोडिकली डेवलप कर सकें. धन्यवाद.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. Now we move on to section 2A, which was to meet wide-ranging testing and certification requirements, setting up of an independent nodal umbrella body. May now call upon Shri Anurag Bajpayee, Joint Secretary, Department of Defense Production, Ministry of Defense, to kindly give his report. Over to you, sir. Mr. Bajpayee, over to you.
Hear him. We can't hear him. Unmute yourself.
Mr. Bajpayee, kindly unmute yourself.
You can cover the fourth session first and then let's bring him in. We can have the fourth session.
We move on to session 2B, which is on SPVs by industries with DRDO and other organizations. And may I now request Mr. PR Agarwal from PTC Industry to kindly cover the report for session 2B. Over to you, Mr. Agarwal.
सचिव जी, एडिशनल सबको नमस्कार। में इस सेशन में जो बातचीत के द्वारा जो इस सेशन के द्वारा जो चीजें कही हैं, उसके अंदर में दो चीजें बहुत स्पष्ट हैं कि DRDO केंद्र में है और यूजर को इसका लाभ मिलना है। किस चीज के लिए मिलना है और कैसे मिलना है, ये एक व्यवस्था के द्वारा उसको डिसाइड करना पड़ेगा। इसके लिए यूजर और DRDO के जो इनपुट्स हैं वो लार्जली इंडस्ट्री के लिए गाइडलाइन बनेंगे। एक तो बहुत स्पष्ट चीज सामने आती है। दूसरी चीज कि इसके अंदर 3 टाइप के उद्योग हमारे हैं, जैसे कि बड़े उद्योग हैं जो एग्रीगेटर्स हैं, जो असेंबल करके कंपोनेंट्स दे रहे हैं, मीडियम स्केल के इंडस्ट्रीज हैं जो कंपोनेंट लेवल पे हैं, और स्मॉल इंडस्ट्रीज हैं जो सब कंपोनेंट्स को बना करके या रॉ मटेरियल बना करके देते हैं। इन तीनों व्यवस्थाओं को हमें साथ लेकर के चलना पड़ेगा और इस SPV के अंदर में उनको तीनों को हमें उचित स्थान देना पड़ेगा। इसके लिए एक और सजेशन था कि हम किसी बड़े प्लेटफॉर्म के लिए कंसोर्शियम अप्रोच लेकर चल सकते हैं। तो ये एक बहुत ही अच्छा सुझाव था जो कि जिसके बारे में MOD को सोचना चाहिए कि यदि हमें कंसोर्शियम अप्रोच रखना है तो जो डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं उनको कैसे हम सिनर्जाइज कर सकते हैं उसके अंदर। तो इसके लिए जो प्रोसेसेस हैं वो थोड़े इवॉल्व करने पड़ेंगे और इस एवोल्यूशन प्रोसेस के अंदर में जो भी स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं उनका इनपुट लेकर के उसको हम लोग एक कॉन्क्रीट शेप दे सकते हैं। इसमें एक और महत्वपूर्ण चीज है कि जो एग्जिस्टिंग रिसोर्सेज हैं हमारे देश में, उसमें काफी कुछ DRDO ने जो इन्वेस्टमेंट कर रखा है और जो इंडस्ट्री को सपोर्ट करते हैं, हमको उसके बियॉन्ड देखना है। ये नहीं कि जिससे कि हम कोई कंकरेंट चीज करने लगे जिससे कि हम जो अपने रिसोर्सेज को वेस्ट कर सके। इसके लिए एक मैं समझता हूँ कि DRDO को एक अम्ब्रेला रोल, एक मेंटर का रोल करना पड़ेगा उसके लिए। और ये जो बाकी इंडस्ट्रीज हैं उनको नेशनल इंटरेस्ट को देखते हुए ये भी देखना है कि हम कैसे कॉस्ट कंपेटिटिव हों, क्वालिटी कंपेटिटिव हों, जिससे कि हम वर्ल्ड को देख सकें, वर्ल्ड मार्केट को भेज सकें। ये SPV की जो रचना बनेगी उसमें इन मुद्दों को सामने लाना पड़ेगा। यही हमारा एक सजेशन है। जय हिंद।
Thank you, Mr. Agarwal. May I now request Mr. Anurag Bajpayee, Joint Secretary, the Department of Defense Production, to kindly summarize the session.
Mr. Banerjee, give me sharing right, please.
Yes. The sharing rights are with you, sir.
नमस्कार सर, ऑनरेबल रक्षा मंत्री जी, ऑनरेबल रक्षा राज्य मंत्री जी, डिफेंस सेक्रेटरी सर। इस ग्रुप में टेस्टिंग एंड सर्टिफिकेशन पे डिस्कशन हुआ था और इसमें लगभग 271 पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने, जो कि इंडस्ट्री, एकेडेमिया और गवर्नमेंट तीनों से थे, तीनों ने पार्टिसिपेट किया। Am I audible, sir? Am I audible?
Audible. Audible.
You're audible.
Full screen कर लीजिए
on the presenter mode.
Yes, sir.
Okay, audible.
Now it's this.
सर, इसमें 271 पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने भाग लिया, इंडस्ट्री से, एकेडेमिया और गवर्नमेंट तीनों से थे। और सेशन लुक्ड एट क्वेश्चंस ऑन स्कोप ऑफ क्रिएटिंग नोडल बॉडी, गवर्नेंस स्ट्रक्चर क्या होना चाहिए, मैकेनिज्म इसकी क्या होगी, इसको फंड कैसे करना है और इंडस्ट्री का रोल इसमें क्या होना चाहिए। इसमें गहन डिस्कशन हुआ और सभी ने इसमें पार्टिसिपेट किया, वो इंडस्ट्री से भी थे, गवर्नमेंट से भी थे। स्कोप में सभी का एक सुझाव था जिसपे कंसेंसस इमर्ज हुआ कि एग्रीगेटर मॉडल, जिसमें कि बोथ प्राइवेट एंड पब्लिक फैसिलिटी, एग्रीगेटर का अगर जहां तक संबंध है वो यहाँ पे यह है कि जितनी भी फैसिलिटीज अवेलेबल हैं इस समय सरकार की हैं या प्राइवेट सेक्टर के साथ हैं, और यह दूसरी मिनिस्ट्रीज के साथ है, उनको जो है एक साथ कलेक्ट करके और उसको जो है एक बॉडी के अंडर हमें लाना है, जिससे कि हम उनका यूटिलाइजेशन, ऑप्टिमम यूटिलाइजेशन कर सकें। और दूसरी जो एक बात उभर के सामने आई वो है कंप्लीट डिजिटलाइजेशन ऑफ फॉर ट्रांसपेरेंसी और एक्सेस टू डेटा, इक्विटेबली इट शुड बी अवेलेबल, और उसमें डिलीवरी, क्योंकि जैसे कि अगर कोई अप्लाई करे तो उसको जो है एक टाइम स्लॉट उसको अलाउड हो जाए और उसके बाद जो है उसका टेस्टिंग और सर्टिफिकेशन की जो है स्टेज पे वो जल्दी से जल्दी पहुंच सके। जहां तक सर गवर्नेंस स्ट्रक्चर की बात है, तो एक ये इसमें कंसेंसस इमर्ज हुआ कि गवर्नमेंट की ओवरसाइट होनी चाहिए, क्योंकि इसमें बहुत से इश्यूज इन्वॉल्व होंगे, पर्टिकुलरली आईपी इश्यूज, तो गवर्नमेंट का जो है ओवरसाइट का रखना जरूरी समझा गया। रिप्रेजेंटेशन फ्रॉम इंडस्ट्री एंड एकेडेमिया, और हेड जो है इसका कोई एक एमिनेंट एक्सपर्ट हो सकता है। फंडिंग में इनिशियल फंडिंग जो है इन फॉर्म ऑफ कॉर्पस फंड या उसको रेगुलर फंडिंग, एनुअल फंडिंग, बट इट इज इन पार्ट। गवर्नमेंट फंडिंग को बोला गया इट इज फ्रॉम पर्टिकुलरली फ्रॉम सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट। इंडस्ट्री का भी इसमें जो है फंडिंग का एक जो है सोर्स होना चाहिए, इसको भी जो है कंसेंसस इसमें इमर्ज हुई थी। स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के लिए बोला गया कि दे में कम एज ए वायबिलिटी गैप फंडिंग, जहां पे उनको इस तरह के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की जरूरत है। और ऑपरेशन जो है वो ये इनका जो ऑपरेशन होगा वो एज ए प्रॉफिट सेंटर होना चाहिए। इट मींस इट इज सम काइंड ऑफ कॉमर्शियल ऑपरेशंस। जो दूसरे सजेशन सर इसमें आए हैं वो है कि इनका जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है अभी जो है वो एक तरह से जो टाइमिंग होती है कि सुबह 10 से 5 इस तरह से यूज होता है, इसका राउंड द क्लॉक यूसेज होना चाहिए फॉर इफिशिएंट यूटिलाइजेशन। जो डेटा बैंक एक क्रिएट करने की जरूरत है, ग्लोबल ट्रेंड्स, और इट शुड बी एक्सेसिबल बाय द इंडस्ट्री so that they can better utilize what is available with this agency or what is available means at various places. एक और जो एक रिकमेंडेशन जो एक उन्होंने बोली वो ये कहा कि accredited testing centers, accredited labs are available with the industry. इनको भी इस बॉडी को रिकॉग्नाइज करने की जरूरत है जिससे कि उनका भी इफिशिएंट यूटिलाइजेशन हो सके। और लास्ट पॉइंट जो बोला गया था वो ये है कि जोनल फैसिलिटी और फैसिलिटीज एट डिफेंस कॉरिडोर्स। जोनल मींस कि जैसे हाई एल्टीट्यूड वगैरह पे अगर फैसिलिटीज नहीं है तो वहां पे भी होनी चाहिए, और क्योंकि अभी जो फैसिलिटीज मोस्टली कन्फाइंड है या तो प्लेन्स में या डेजर्ट्स में, दूसरे एरियाज में अवेलेबल नहीं है, और डिफेंस कॉरिडोर्स को भी पूरी तरह से सक्षम बनाने के लिए फैसिलिटीज का वहां होना जरूरी है। विद दीज वर्ड्स सर, थैंक यू वेरी मच सर।
Thank you very much, Mr. Bajpayee. May I now request Honorable Raksha Mantri Shri Rajnath Singh Ji to kindly deliver the valedictory address.
प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी, जय भट्ट जी, हमारे रक्षा राज्य मंत्री और एयर चीफ मार्शल श्री जी चौधरी, डॉक्टर अजय कुमार, रक्षा एवं उत्पादन सचिव, भारत सरकार, रक्षा मंत्रालय, DPSU, एवं आर्म्ड फोर्सेस के सभी सीनियर ऑफिसर्स, इंडस्ट्री पार्टनर, स्टार्टअप्स, एकेडमिया, मीडिया पार्टनर एवं देवियों व सज्जनों, एट द आउटसेट I express my sincere gratitude towards our Honorable Prime Minister for his leadership and guidance in realizing the goal of Aatmanirbharta. His vision has been aptly reflected in this year's budget announcements, which have given further impetus to Aatmanirbharta in defense. My heartfelt thanks to him for sparing his valuable time and delivering the keynote inaugural address, which has infused a new zeal in all of us for working wholeheartedly towards making a Shresth Bharat. The 4 themes selected for this webinar are quite relevant in adding momentum to the budget announcements and paving way for their speedy implementation. I am thankful to all participants, including the services, ministry officials, defense industry, industry forums, research and development organizations, startups, and academia for providing valuable inputs for strengthening our intent to make India a global defense manufacturing hub. My friends, as we all know, research and development of technology are integral to Aatmanirbharta in defense. Time has now come that the defense industry, research and development organizations, startups, academia come together and leverage capabilities of each other for development of modern defense technology so that India can be self-reliant in defense technologies as well. With this thought in mind, in the annual budget up for 2022-23, it has been announced that the defense research and development will be open for industry, startup and academia. 25% of defense research and development budget has also been earmarked for this purpose. I am happy to see that there has been extensive discussion during the webinar today on the various aspects of the budget announcement with respect of MOD. Friends, detailed deliberations were also held regarding the SPV model for undertaking indigenous research and development. I am confident that in the near future, we will see many projects being undertaken by the private industry for design and development of military platforms and equipment in collaboration with DRDO and other organizations through SPV model. The potential growth of Indian defense industry and opening up of defense research and development for the private industry, startups and academia warrants adequate facility and infrastructure for testing, trial and certification of indigenous products. Creating a Made in India brand also necessitates rigorous testing trials of Indian products as per international standards. For meeting the wide-ranging requirements of the trial, testing and certification, the government has decided to set up an independent nodal umbrella body. It gives me immense satisfaction that the stakeholders have openly discussed about numerous ways to making an effective body which should guide the government in finalizing the contours of this body. I am envisaging this body to play a critical and important role, not only in the making our country self-reliant, but also in becoming a global manufacturing hub. Friends, the government's commitment towards a reduction in imports and modernize our armed forces with our indigenous technology has been given further impetus in this way. We have been progressively increasing the capital procurement budget for the domestic industry, with 68% of the capital procurement budget earmarked for 2022-23. I am sure that the domestic industry is fully capable to absorb this enhanced budget. I assure them that the government will continue its pro-industry policy initiatives for promoting Make in India with greater zeal. I am sure that the department has noted all the variable suggestions received and deliberated during this webinar and has also drawn an action plan for time-bound implementation of the budget announcements for Aatmanirbharta in defense. My friends, here I would like to make some announcements. First, for promoting industry-led research and development efforts, I would sanction at least 5 projects under Make 1 during the financial year 2022-23. Thank you very much. Second, we would create a monitoring mechanism under DG acquisition with representatives from all the 3 services to monitor the budget earmark specifically for private industry and startups so that it is fully utilized. Third, we would reform the quality assurance process so that it is non-intrusive and is prevention based and remove the Inspector Raj. Fourth, we would come up with IDEX Prime to support projects requiring support beyond rupees 1.5 crore up to rupees 10 crore. This would help our emerging startups in defense sector. On this occasion, I once again thank all stakeholders for providing their valuable inputs and urge the private industry, startups, and academia to come forward to join hands with DRDO, DPSOs, and other MOD organizations to achieve greater heights in defense manufacturing and research and development. I congratulate the officials of Ministry of Defense for organizing this extremely useful webinar. Jai Hind. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your inspiring words, sir. May I now request Shri Anurag Bajpayee, Joint Secretary, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji, Honorable Raksha Rajya Mantri Ji, Service Chiefs, Defense Secretary, sir, other officials, members of industry, ladies and gentlemen, I feel privileged to extend formal vote of thanks for this significant budget webinar for the year 2022-23. It was a great honor today that Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has addressed us in the inaugural session and gave his vision and directions. The Ministry of Defense under the leadership of Honorable Raksha Mantri would leave no stone unturned to realize the vision of Honorable Prime Minister. We are delighted to extend our sincere gratitude to Honorable Raksha Mantri ji for his dynamic leadership and continuous support to achieve the goals. We are grateful to you, sir, for being here for the cause of country's growth whole day. Sir, under your leadership, the ministry would come up to the expectation of the country. Thank you very much once again. I am also privileged to extend sincere thanks to Honorable Raksha Rajya Mantri ji for his kind support in our endeavor. We are grateful to our Defense Secretary, who has provided all-round guidance and support in designing the structure of this entire webinar, which led to fruitful discussion with all stakeholders. It would help the ministry in developing the roadmap. We recognize the support of all service chiefs, Secretary and Chairman DRDO, and senior officers of the ministry. We also recognize and thank to all speakers and panelists who have participated in the various sessions and gave their valuable inputs to develop the roadmap for the defense industry. We would like to extend our sincere gratitude to all industries, industry associations, MSMEs, startups, and all others who have joined this budget webinar. Last but not the least, it was a tremendous effort made by SIDM, its officials, and officials of Directorate of P&C who have worked hard day and night for organizing this webinar and make it successful. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir.